This bro is just gaming and live streaming, with only a single viewer. Then suddenly that lone spectator chats that he's been chosen. Before he can process what's going on, he blacks out and falls off his chair. When he wakes up, he hears explosions outside and rushes to the window, only to see the whole city engulfed in flames. Deciding to head out, he tries to talk to a woman, but she runs away in terror. Strangely enough, a chat window pops up right in front of John-Soo, leaving him shook as users comment on everything he says. Netizens troll him, wondering if too much streaming fried his brain. One of them warns that someone is charging toward him. Suddenly a zombie appears right in front of John-Soo. The chat goes wild with predictions that he's about to get cooked. Immediately, the zombie attacks. But our MC manages to escape just in time. He bolts into an apartment building, but the zombie breaks through the door and charges in. While trying to run back to his flat, he accidentally heads for the rooftop exit. The door is stuck. Some users urge him to pull it while others tell him to push. Finally, the door bursts open and John-Soo escapes to the roof. He slams the door shut and gasps for air. He recalls everything from the explosion to the weird chat window and decides he needs a weapon to take on the zombies. Out of nowhere, the landlord, now a zombie, approaches him. John-Soo trips, giving the zombie landlord an opening to attack. A user jokes about whether the landlord is a loot box, making John-Soo take a closer look. He kicks the zombie away, and when it charges again, he shoves it off the roof. Viewers claim it was just a fluke. Before he can catch his breath, the rooftop door gives way as 2 more zombies burst in. Our guy stumbles upon a supply crate. He rips it open and finds a baseball bat inside. The door swings wide open as the horde swarms the roof. John-Soo smirks, determined to wreck them, even if the apocalypse feels like a game. The zombies snarl as John-Soo swings the bat at them, but he doesn't land a single hit. He screams in desperation while flailing the bat, low-key admitting he has no clue how to use it properly. In a moment of panic, he tries to throw hands with the zombies, but ends up wiping out on the floor. Realizing taking them down one by one is pointless, the kid snaps the bat and uses the jagged end to impale all 3 zombies. At the same time, he gets back to the flat only to find both his PC and phone are completely bricked. A user asks about the next move, and our MC replies that he's heading to his parents' place. He rips his motorcycle through the chaotic streets while the netizens keep yapping in the chat, recalling the grim situation downtown. He starts getting anxious about his family. Suddenly, a long tongue lashes out right in front of him. John-Soo loses his balance and wipes out. A user asks if that was actually a tongue. As John-Soo scrambles back to his feet, he spots a hell frog dead staring him. He's stunned to see the world isn't just full of zombies, but monsters too. A user jokes that the tongue looks like a tape measure as he dodges the next attack. He bolts into an alleyway, deciding to pull constant sharp turns to lose the monster. He pulls a lighter and a liquor bottle from his backpack, ready for a death match in a dead end. The frog lunges, but John-Soo jukes it, making it slam hard into a pile of trash. He quickly ignites the bottle and yeets it at the frog, then hurls a second Molotov straight into its maw. Realizing the monster's weak spot is an internal hit, our hero grabs the last bottle, determined to finish it. He baits the frog into charging, and as it lashes its tongue out, John-Soo seizes the moment and throws the flaming bottle into its mouth. The monster collapses, writhing in a sea of fire before finally kicking the bucket. A user remarks they've never seen anyone carry this hard in the early game. John-Soo wonders if they really think this is just a game while his life is literally hanging by a thread. Unsure if any of this is real, he vows he won't die a lame death. A system window pops up, and the guy realizes he's gained the attract and record skills. Realizing this is exactly like a game, he shouts skill window, and a new detailed window appears, showing the skill effects. He discovers he'll have to dive headfirst into danger because of these skills. Closing the notification, John-Soo decides to focus on finding his family. He finds the bike is totaled and beyond repair, but luckily he's close enough to hoof it. When he reaches his parents' house, he sees the building is almost completely trashed. He rushes inside to search, but sadly finds nobody there. He then starts looking for any notes they might have left and finds a paper in his room. His parents wrote that they evacuated with the Army's 7.5 Division. John-Soo stands frozen after reading the name 7.5 Division. Netizens comment asking if his parents ditched him or if he's about to go crybaby mode. John-Soo feels a sense of dread. His dad would never just leave him behind like this. He suddenly realizes if this world runs like a game, the missing person scenario is definitely a setup, meant to drive the plot. He decides not to act impulsively, realizing the only lead is the 7.5 Division. Checking the kitchen, the young man finds some tuna. He decides to eat before leaving since there's nothing else to do. Suddenly, a strange noise catches his attention. Grabbing a kitchen knife, he cautiously sweeps the house. A thud outside the window makes him jump. As he swings the door open, a zombie snatches his arm, try to climb inside. John-Soo uses a knife to push it back and slams the window shut. The system notifies him that he's attracted 109.58. John-Soo wonders if the skill proc because of that zombie. Recalling that for the next 10 minutes, he'll get a power buff with every kill. Itching to test it out, he faces another zombie at the door and takes it out with a hammer. The skill tracks the kill count. He repeats the process, clutching a total of 7 zombie kills. Before he can check his skill progress, a noise from the kitchen catches his ear. There, he finds a man hiding under the table. The stranger, grateful for being found, has cooked up a meal for both of them, addressing the viewers as the homies. Our MC jokes that he was going to eat anyway and reassures them he'll make a move if things get dicey. While serving the food, the man explains that he's a chef at Myeongseeo East. He came to collect 8 plates, but got jumped by zombies since they were short on delivery guys. John-Soo recalls the man apologizing for hiding in his house, begging not to be kicked out, and offering to cook his payback. Now, John-Soo praises the meal and says he'll be heading out soon to scout for more info. The stranger offers to tag along, explaining that the elementary school in front of his restaurant has become a shelter, and John-Soo could ask for news from the people there. Our hero thinks to himself that if this really is a game, then this guy might be an NPC providing clues to advance the plot. He asks the man's name, confirming it's Min-Ju Jong. After finishing the meal, John-Soo learns that Min-Ju ditched his motorcycle while he was on the run. John-Soo remembers there's a bicycle in the garage and prepares to grab it, while Min-Ju volunteers to keep watch. A moment later, Min-Ju's scream rings out. Rushing outside, our MC sees a massive monster gripping Min-Ju tightly, about to swallow him whole. The netizens, his homies, call the creature Big Head and advise him to ignore it if he doesn't want to get clapped. Deciding quickly, John-Soo races to the garage, grabs the bike, and bails while Big Head eats Min-Ju. While pedaling, he spots Min-Ju's motorcycle, with the keys still in the ignition. He switches to the motorcycle, calculating how to handle the monster chasing him. Meanwhile, at the elementary school shelter, an officer orders everyone inside to set up barricades. Minru's boss gets heated upon hearing Minru might be dead. But Mr. Jong, an elder, calms him down and urges everyone inside. Right then, John-Soo arrives at the shelter, riding the motorcycle and dragging something behind him. Mr. Jong notices and reacts to the bizarre sight. The thing John-Soo is dragging behind the bike is a giant finger, leaving everyone at the shelter shook. Mr. Jong anxiously asks about Min-Ju. John-Soo simply states that Min-Ju is dead, then quickly adds that he's in a rush and asks who's in charge. Seo-Jin Lee, the head of security and transport, steps up and explains that he manages the entrance. Curious, Seo-Jin asks if that giant finger belonged to that big monster. Thanks to that, John-Soo learns more about the creature. Seo-Jin admits he witnessed the monster eating people but only dared to watch from afar. John-Soo reveals that he killed the monster, recalling how he risked his life to take down Big Head. The beast had been relentlessly chasing him, destroying everything in its path. At that moment, our guy made a bet with the homies watching the live stream. If he survived, they'd owe him a favor. If not, he'd be dead. All the viewers, including the lone loyal spectator, accepted the bet. Upon reaching a tunnel, John-Soo lured the monster inside, where it charged at max speed, before crashing and biting the dust. Back to the present, he explains he came looking for shelter. The guy in charge insists on an infection check first. Other survivors urge Seo-Jin to let John-Soo in, and after a thorough check, the officers find nothing unusual and allow him inside. Mr. Jong asks one more time if Min-Ju has really passed away. John-Soo repeats his words and asks if they knew each other. Mr. Jong reveals he's the owner of the restaurant where Min-Ju worked. John-Soo tells him everything that happened, not forgetting to clarify that he didn't steal the motorcycle, with a gentle look. Our hero says he'll never forget the mapo tofu that Min-Ju made for him, then asks for permission to head inside. Suddenly, the system announces that he is leaving the tutorial area. He can now use the status board to boost his survival chances. This revelation leaves John-Soo shook. Everything up until now was just the tutorial. He finds an empty classroom and says he wants to talk to only one, recalling the bet he accepted. Only one asks if he wants to talk, and our hero demands an explanation. One of the homies asks you didn't get a manual, and John-Soo says no, leaving the crowd stunned. A user comments that if John-Soo beats the game, the world will be recreated according to his will. Only one explains that this is the original world John-Soo lived in, and they are just using his exit He adds that John-Soo is the only player and the only one who can interact with them. He is the MC. Our hero immediately asks if Min-ju was an NPC, and only one confirms it. Only one warns him to treat the users like his audience. If he doesn't beat the game, the world will stay like this forever, feeling anxious. Our guy asks who only one really is. But only one deflects, asking if his characters ever question him like that. Only one remarks that he likes our hero's swordsmanship and challenges him to go out and show something. Impressive. Suddenly, John-Soo remembers the status board he just gained access to. He opens it and sees his objective is to rescue the police chief at the school. Later, outside on the school grounds, the police are busy setting up a food distribution stall. Our protagonist notes there are about 150 people gathered here. When an officer announces the food distribution is starting, John-Soo heads toward the main building, determined to carry out his mission. He asks the officer on duty about the police chief's whereabouts. The officer refuses to answer, but John-Soo insists he'll help if he's given info, suggesting the officer check with Department Head Lee. The officer radios Department Head Lee, who allows sharing the details with John-Soo after confirming he defeated a monster. The officer explains that the police chief went missing after going on patrol and never returned. John-Soo presses for more info, wondering why they haven't organized a search party. The officer explains that with only 30 personnel, their resources are spread too thin. Determined, John-Soo decides to check the chief's temporary office for clues, believing they need more intel to run a proper search inside the office. He finds a map with a specific location marked on it. Right then, there's a knock at the door. Police Captain Kyung Ho-jin walks in and greets him. They shake hands, but Kyung Ho grips his hand weirdly tight and asks what he's discovered. Suddenly, screams erupt outside. John-Soo bolts out and sees infected people mixing into the crowd of evacuees, sending the whole area into pure chaos. He quickly decides to step in, advising the police to use batons instead of guns. Meanwhile, Mr. Jong charges forward, swinging a frying pan to smack the zombies. Taking turns, he and John-Soo take down the attackers. John-Soo uses his hammer with extreme efficiency. The evacuees demand the gates be opened, and an officer tries to calm the mob. An evacuee questions why the infected were let through the checkpoint in the first place. John-Soo realizes the infected didn't break in. They walked in with everyone else. He gets heated thinking one of the cops might have let them in. Our guy decides to leave and hunt for the missing police chief on his own. He approaches Mr. Jong, Loki asking him to keep an eye on the cops and warning him not to join the search party. John-Soo explains this is how he's paying back Min-ju's kindness. Department Head Lee and Captain Jean try to stop him, but John-Soo ignores them and heads out, riding Min-ju's motorcycle toward the marked location. After a short ride, he reaches a deserted spot and starts scouting the area. Spotting footprints he suspects belong to zombies. Suddenly, our guy wonders out loud why he hasn't received any more supply crates. One of the homies points out that supply crates are paid content, while another reminds him that he already received a trial gem that let him open the previous crate. They guide him to tap the chat window and scroll down. Following their advice, he discovers the donate button and sees the homies have already sent him some cash. He drops to his knees, shouting in frustration because they didn't tell him sooner. John-Soo enters a container house, while the homies troll him for screaming his head off and then acting all salty. Our guy suspects there are still things they're hiding from him. Checking the container, he wonders if the chief is being held here. Suddenly, a zombie slams hard against the window, startling Yeonsu. He realizes those footprints really were from zombies. As one tries to burst through the door, he quickly kicks it flying outside. He starts picking off the zombies one by one, activating his Excel skill. With his physical stats buffed to 240, John-Soo continues hunting the undead, until a jeep comes tearing in, plowing through several zombies right behind him. Diving to the side, our hero quickly realizes the driver is the one responsible for letting the zombies in inside the jeep. Captain Kyung Ho-jin is shook seeing John-Soo dodge the car and solo the entire zombie pack. Desperate, Kyung Ho floors the gas, aiming straight for our hero. But when he checks the body he just hit, it turns out to be a zombie. In a flash, John-Soo bangs on the jeep's window, demanding he open up. When the captain refuses, our hero smashes the glass, only to get blasted by a taser. As Kyung Ho starts peeling out to escape, not backing down, John-Soo chases after the jeep. Kyung Ho pulls up between two containers and hits a button, unleashing a swarm of zombies from inside. Surrounded on all sides, our guy feels his Excel power spike. His physical stats skyrocket to 500. He starts tearing through the zombies, but their numbers are too overwhelming. Realizing he must stop the captain, John-Soo lunges toward him. He finally catches up to Kyung-ho and overhears him ordering the police chief's relocation. Our hero grabs his right hand, then his left, crushing both with raw strength, before kicking the captain aside and hijacking the driver's seat. Finding a pair of handcuffs, he ignores the homies trolling about using them to bait more donations, and instead cuffs the captain to the Jeep, John-soo, then drives the Jeep, crushing the zombies under the wheels as he heads back to the school. Suddenly, he spots a teddy bear moving across the road. Startled, he slams on the brakes and watches the teddy bear tumble to the curb. The homies are just joking around, but John-soo is locked in on the bizarre sight. The teddy bear stands up on its own and starts moving. He keeps his eyes glued to the weird little figure, wary of what's coming next. John-soo stares at the teddy bear in terror, asking the homies what the heck that thing is. Only one explains it's a unique bear tasked with leading him to a supply crate. Meanwhile, Kyung-ho starts coming to. Our kid gives the homies two choices. Either gently tell Kyung-ho to go back to sleep, or use the taser to knock him out. Most pick option 1, but John-soo chooses option 2, quickly neutralizing Kyung-ho before following the bear. The bear leads John-soo to a supply crate. The crate costs 5 gems, and the shield icon convinces our guy there won't be a weapon inside. He anxiously buys it, but then only receives a flashlight. Disappointed, but not discouraged, he focuses on getting back to the school. At the school, the officers are arguing about how a zombie got past the checkpoint, while others urge everyone to prioritize cleaning up the mess. Head of department Lee intervenes, directing the police to focus on the civilians and reminding them to take pride for preventing an even bigger disaster. Later, Lee approaches the officers stationed at the main building entrance. He learns that Kyung-ho was tasked with moving the chief and wonders if John-soo was behind it. He thought the kid was SUS from the very start. Deciding to handle it himself, department head Lee orders the 3 of them to keep this intel on the down low. Meanwhile, Mr. Jong eavesdrops on the whole conversation and suspects they're up to something shady. He observes Lee heading down to the outer basement. 2 officers discover Kyung-ho's Jeep and find him dead inside. Elsewhere, Mr. Jong frantically runs up the stairs, determined to warn our guy. Suddenly, he bumps into John-soo, who's wearing a cap and a hoodie. Mr. Jong hurries to tell him that the chief and Lee are in the basement, and that the sentry at the door is an accomplice too. Our guy wastes no time and heads straight for the chief's holding room. Inside, Lee is threatening the chief with a taser baton. Meanwhile, one of the homies promises to donate a gem if John-soo lands a flying kick on Lee. Without hesitation, the kid lunges with a kick and secures the donation money immediately. Lee opens fire, but John-soo grabs his arm, making the shot miss. He then knees his opponent while Lee keeps pulling the trigger until the gun runs dry. Seizing the chance, John-soo lands 3 punches to his face, while demanding the keys. John-soo sees Lee reaching for the taser baton, showing fast reflexes. John-soo shocks him with Kyung-ho's taser, telling him to say hi to Kyung-ho for him. He takes Lee's gun. He turns to face the officer guarding the basement. As the officer walks in, the kid pops a shot at his head, causing the homies to spam donations in pure hype. Turning back to Lee, the MC points the gun at him, debating where to shoot. Finally, he presses the barrel against Lee's head, reminding him how eager he was to shoot just a moment ago. Another donor drops a gem. John-soo smiles and thanks the homies, while Lee screams in pure terror. Lee is literally shitting his pants, making John-soo put the gun away. He then helps the chief out of the basement. John-soo explains to the other officers that the masterminds are tied up downstairs. Finally, the MC breathes a sigh of relief and opens the status board, which suggests that staying in one place for too long is dangerous. Later, John-soo rests in a room, reflecting on how much everything has changed in just one day. One guy congratulates him on saving the chief, while another advises him to stay put. However, John-soo feels uneasy about the warning on the board and wonders how long counts as too long. One of the homies suggests, looking for an omen to know when to bounce, but doesn't elaborate further. Annoyed, our guy decides to get up and leave right then. Outside, the chief approaches and asks if he's leaving. Shaking his head, the kid asks what's up. The chief thanks him for all the help and says they've decided to hook him up with supplies. John-soo recalls that the chief couldn't bring himself to finish off his former comrades, so he volunteered for the job. He ties Lee and the police captain behind the Jeep and drives off, dragging them behind as the zombies give chase. A user named Torture Lover donates a gem. As the MC speeds up, both of those former bosses are left in the dust. He later claims there was a minor accident during their evacuation. Back to the present, the kid accepts the supply offer, and the chief even hooks him up with the Jeep. That night, the MC sits in the car, checking out the flashlight. The homies are still being all cryptic with their hints, so he decides to catch some Z's. A moment later, he feels a chill and looks in the mirror, only to see a dark figure, a cloaked skeleton, staring him down. Getting major goosebumps, he cranks the engine and peels out past the school, thinking he probably won't be getting a proper goodbye. He grumbles at the homies for not warning him, but one explains they can't help or they'll get banned from the channel. Looking back, John-Soo sees the skeleton has vanished, but then it suddenly shatters the car window, scaring the soul out of him. He floors it and slams into something. The cloaked skeleton approaches as the kid jumps out and starts blasting, but the bullets don't do squat. He retreats into a building, only to find the skeleton standing right in front of him. The monster lunges, but gets hit by the beam from John-Soo's flashlight. Realizing its weakness, he keeps firing and bails through the window, right as Torture Lover donates another gem as toll money for the dead. Outside, he tries to take a bike, but the tire is flat, making him faceplant. The skeleton closes in, so the kid uses the flashlight and keeps shooting. Noticing the monster can't cross a certain boundary, he fires the last round, and the skeleton finally vanishes. Exhausted, Yonsukelapsis, but then spots something sus nearby. A flashlight beam is flickering on and off. John-Soo observes the phenomenon closely. He realizes it's Morse code and readies his gun. As the person with the flashlight approaches, he immediately aims the gun at him. The stranger, Minchin Yang, wearing a school uniform, and righteously claims he's not a bad guy and asks if John-Soo is a cop. John-Soo sees Minchin is alone and demands the flashlight. The kid reluctantly hands it over. Next, John-Soo tells him to hand over the backpack. Minchin protests, explaining it only has emergency rations. But under pressure, he confesses it's just ramen, ham, and tuna. About to leave, Minchin is stopped when our guy orders the kid to strip down. After checking, Minchin shows nothing suspicious. John-Soo ponders how he survived without a weapon and accuses him of having accomplices. He low-key tells the homies to keep an eye on this new guy while he looks away. Walking off, the kid tells Minchin they should go their separate ways and keeps the flashlight. Minchin panics, screaming that all his friends died to protect him before bursting into tears. The homies point out that Minchin's suffering makes it clear that he's spitting facts. John-Soo catches feels and tells Minchin to follow him, admitting he can't just ditch a junior like that. Then chaos breaks out as a hell frog attacks with its tongue. Minchin screams for help because a big head is chasing him. Now both of them are running for their lives. Minchin leads the MC into an alleyway, instructing him to pull a sharp turn to reach the sewer, planning to run along the edge of the drain. As they make it across, the big head trips and falls into the water. Up ahead, John-Soo spots the hellfrog's tongue and warns Minchin to duck when he gives the signal. The frog crawls out from a side path and whips its tongue out. They both duck, and the tongue smacks the big head behind them. The hellfrog and big head start scrapping, giving John-Soo and Minchin a chance to escape. Minchin then leads him to a bike rental shop, and they take off on a tandem bike. Even though it's hard to steer, Minchin keeps encouraging him, saying they're almost there. The kid explains he found the spot on a map and describes it as super safe and fully loaded. Minchin asks John-Soo if he knows anything about the 7.5 Division, mentioning he looked for his friends but only found a note saying the 7.5 Division had picked them up. The MC admits he doesn't know much either and wonders if they're only handpicking certain people. Finally, they reach their destination just as a Jeep comes crashing down right in front of them. John-Soo rushes over and finds someone inside, confirming it's a human. The MC pulls him out and learns his name is Private Yongjin Cho. He loots the Jeep for supplies, but comes up empty-handed. Suddenly, Yunjin pulls a knife, but John-Soo kicks it away and confiscates the weapon. Calling Yunjin a deserter, he grills him on why a private is out here and if he betrayed his squad. Yunjin panics, claiming everyone else is dead and he's the lone survivor. Min Chun accidentally wonders out loud if Yongjin is even a real soldier. Observing closely, John-Soo pulls out Yongjin's dog tags and orders him to recite his service number to prove he knows it by heart. Yunjin recites the number fluently, but John-Soo stays on guard. He asks Yunjin about the 7.5 Division, but Yunjin insists it's the first time he's ever heard that name. Min-Chun points out that staying outside too long is sketchy, and our guy agrees to jump over the Jeep to clear the gate. Min-Chun hesitates about leaving Yunjin behind, but John-Soo brushes it off, calling him useless. Min-Chun keeps begging, while Yunjin desperately pleads to go along, explaining his leg is broken. John-Soo recalls Yunjin's earlier wish to be left alone, but Yunjin admits he only said that because he was terrified. Reluctantly, the MC agrees to bring him in. Since there's no power for the gate, he tells Min-Chun to open it manually and helps Yunjin inside. While all three are inside, Jansu notices there are only 4 cars in the lot, and wonders why the gate was closed if everyone bailed in their cars. While scouting the building, they find it empty. Min Chun grabs a crutch from the infirmary for Yangjin. While the MC announces he's going to recon the area, Min Chun anxiously grabs his sleeve, scared of being ditched. But Jansu reassures him with a nod. Heading upstairs, Jansu low-key asks the homies if he should just leave Min Chun behind, since the vending machines make this spot pretty safe. However, the viewers aren't vibing with that idea at all. Suddenly, the guy hears voices coming from a radio in a nearby room. He finds the power is still on and learns from a broadcast that the 7.4 division is guiding everyone to Jeju Island, and everyone is ordered to head to Daejeon by train. Feeling like he's got a lead, Jansu opens the status board. It now directs him to escape the city via the train station. The viewers get hyped, commenting on the long grind ahead. Heading back downstairs, the guy only finds Yangjin on the bed. Min Chun had gone down to the basement to check out a weird noise. Immediately, Jansu goes to the office, hoping to find taxi keys for the getaway. Suspecting someone intentionally cut the lights. During the search, he hears a noise and rushes back to Yangjin, only to find him sprawled on the floor. Though Jansu suspects a monster, Yangjin embarrassedly confesses he just tripped. Suddenly, footsteps echo from the stairs, and both tense up as a man appears, holding a knife to Min Chun's throat. Min Chun urges Jansu to run, but the guy just asks why. He brandishes his own knife, demanding the guy let Min Chun go. The man turns out to be the company CEO, calling Min Chun a thief for breaking into his business. Ranting that he's too busy taking customer calls to deal with looters, he complains about the lack of drivers. Yangjin worries Min Chun might get shanked, but the MC admits it was as bad for letting the kid go alone. Thinking fast, Jansu starts acting, claiming they aren't thieves but drivers here to help. Flexing his skills, he offers to handle all the customers and insists the boss interview him. The boss demands an application form so they can proceed. Jansu lies, saying he left in the office, and Loki signals Yangjin to grab any form that looks like him. Yangjin sneaks away and soon hands a form to someone. Matching Jansu's description. While the boss is busy reading, Min Chun seizes the moment and kicks him, and the guy knocks him out cold using Yangjin's crutch. With the boss neutralized and the keys in hand, they rush outside and pile into a taxi. Yangjin is shocked he has to drive with a broken left leg, but the MC urges him to head for the station. As they make their escape, people start swarming the building looking for cover, only to be devoured by the approaching monster. The creature closes in on the taxi, screeching loudly, while Jansu wonders why a crawler is showing up here. Pure terror grips Yangjin as he cranks the engine, quickly pulling a U-turn toward the main gate. Jansu realizes the monster will catch up soon. He sees the So stepping out of the main building. Acting fast, the MC tells Yangjin to drive toward the building instead of the gate. As the car tears in that direction, the monster gives chase. But with a spectacular steering move, Yangjin swerves back toward the main gate just in time, sending the monster crashing straight into the building. Back on the main road, Yangjin expresses regret over the CEO's fate, but Jansu points out there was no other way, and Min Chun agrees. Suddenly, the guy spots a blue line on the door. Crossing it, he realizes they've reached a checkpoint. The system announces that quest settings are now unlocked for the chat, allowing viewers to buy various effects as rewards for the player. One homie, Microsoft Outlook, celebrates the chance to flex while another jokes about unlocking the pay-to-win feature. Curious, the MC wonders if the people next to him can see this, but soon learns they can't even hear him talking to the homies. Confused by the changes, he asks the chat for an explanation immediately. Max S. Outcast donates a gem, and Jansu thanks him, but then hears the thumping footsteps of the reptile monster returning. As the crawler tails them closely, Jansu urges Yangjin to floor it, but Yangjin insists this is top speed. The monster closes the gap, making the MC wonder if it runs faster in a straight line. He quickly asks Min Chun if he knows any other routes. After a moment's thought, Min Chun tells Yangjin to head up the hill ahead. Jansu insists on following Min Chun's lead, and the car begins the steep climb. Soon they approach a cliffside. Min Chun urges Yangjin to keep going. Anxious, the MC asks the homies for a quest, fearing the worst. Luckily, Max S. Outcast sets a challenge. Roll down the window and taunt the crawler. The reward will keep the car from being knocked off the road for 15 seconds. Following the instructions, Jansu rolls down the window and screams provocations at the monster, making it stall for a split second. Min Chun panics and screams for an explanation, but the MC keeps taunting the crawler, hoping the plan works. As the quest is completed, the effect triggers. Hugging the cliff edge, Yangjin drifts the car. and the crawler plummets into the abyss. Yunjin is stunned by the near-death escape, while Jiansu thanks Max S. Outcast for the clutch quest. Finally, they reach the train station but find it deserted. Jiansu suggests taking cover and continuing on foot, but Yunjin points out the zombies standing up ahead. Jiansu steps out to draw their attention, facing off against a total of 3 zombies. While reflecting on his increased power and how he should invest his skill points, he quickly takes one down, then handles the rest with ease. He notes that both his strength and reflexes have improved significantly since day 1. Lost in thought, he snapped back to reality by a scream. Jiansu notices a man struggling with a zombie, desperately calling out the name Chan Guk Dong, realizing that's the mayor's name. Jiansu asks the homies if he should help. Everyone agrees except Max S. Outcast, deciding to act. The MC wipes out the zombie, then asks the man why he was calling Chan Guk Dong's name. The stranger explains that the mayor left him for dead. He recounts how he suggested taking a different route after they encountered zombies, but the mayor threw him out of the car, just for speaking up. The MC deduces they'll likely run into the mayor at the station, and the stranger agrees, adding that the mayor has plenty of guards. Jiansu also learns the mayor hired outside muscle for help. He thanks the stranger for the intel. Reaching the stairs leading to the main terminal, the guy asks the stranger's name and learns he's Mr. Ayu. As they head up, they spot a little girl standing on the steps. Mr. Ayu is about to call out, but the MC quickly covers his mouth. He whispers that it's not actually a child. That girl is actually a zombie. Jiansu's homies comment that his luck is straight trash. He wonders if he's in real danger and asks about the quest reward. One of the homies reminds him the last quest for Max Outcast was worth 100 gems, with 1 gem worth about 7.53, leaving Jiansu dizzy as he realizes the total reward is 753. Signaling Mr. Ayu to stay quiet, the guy waits as a loud noise echoes from the station. The girl zombie reacts to the sound and heads inside. Mr. Ayu, however, refuses to follow and bolts in the opposite direction only to trip and run straight into another female zombie. She kills him. While Jiansu's homies explain she's a silent girl, a blind type of zombie that reacts to sound. The noise from the station triggers the silent girl to move. Suddenly, new master drops a quest. Don't move until the silent girl passes. The reward is the ability to strip the hearing of any target Jiansu touches. Holding his breath, our protagonist stands, dead still as the silent girl glides past without detecting him. When she finally heads inside, he collapses in relief and claims his reward. He heads down to check on Mr. Ayu and grabs his employee ID. He's shocked to see Mr. Ayu's corpse turning, but our hero quickly finishes him off. He realizes that a silent girl can turn the living into zombies. He rushes inside to find Yunjin and Minshin, only to find both of them being hunted by a pack of silent girls. For a split second, our guy considers ditching them, believing it's not worth the risk. But new master intervenes with another quest. Save Minshin and Yunjin for a 20-gem reward. Accepting the challenge, Jiansu goes into an empty restaurant, grabs a stopwatch, and names the plan Operation Self-Destruct Clock. Meanwhile, Minshin and Yunjin are huddled on top of a bathroom stall as the silent girls claw at the walls. Luckily, our hero arrives. He sets the clock to beep repeatedly and tosses it away from the bathroom. The silent girls get distracted and chase after the sound. Minshin and Yunjin quietly climb down. When a homie asks why he didn't use the quest reward, Jiansu explains it's too risky, since it requires touching the target. Unfortunately, Yunjin admits his ankle is snapped, so the MC tells Minshin to help him walk. With 20 gems secured, our guy leads them toward the main terminal, but suddenly notices Yunjin is starting to turn into a zombie. Gritting his teeth, Jiansu pulls Minshin away, declaring it's too late to save their companion. Questions swirl through our hero's mind, but he's locked in on escaping first. Right then, Yunjin points toward the status board, signaling that the train is still running. Jiansu is shook to find out the trains are actually operational. He thanks Yunjin before moving forward. Low-key vow to beat the game and repay him one day with Minshin by his side. Our guy waits for the train, but warns Minshin to stay alert, since the train might be bringing trouble along with it. Suddenly, an announcement blares saying the next train is bypassing the station. Immediately, they duck into a crate. An express train tears through, dragging a crawling monster right behind it. Peeking out, our hero wonders what the hell is going on. But another train soon arrives and pulls up at the platform. Jiansu steps out and tells Minshin to stay put. Approaching the train, he observes the conductor. A woman steps out, fuming, demanding to know where the mayor is. While hiding, Jiansu recalls reading an interview about her. Her name is Zhang Sijin, a train engineer. He overhears her grumbling about the 7.5 division and cursing the orders she has to follow just to get a spot in a shelter. Our guy notices she looks way different from her interview photos and decides he needs to get her on his side. Meanwhile, Minhoon peeks out and signals they could take her down since she's solo. The hero quickly intervenes, calming both Sejin and Minchin. Sejin is SUS, thinking they're trying to hijack her train. John-Soo flashes Mr. IU's City Hall employee ID. Claiming it's his, Sejin then recognizes his authority in John. Soo explains that a lot of crap has gone down. The mayor is dead, and they were ambushed on the way here. Now they're the only ones left. Right then, zombie groans echo through the station. John-Soo urges them to bounce immediately, insisting it's just the three of them getting on. Sejin protests, but our guy points out that if the mayor is dead, her contract is void anyway. She reluctantly lets him board and mentions puppy dog eyes. Get the kid a pass to tag along too. As the train pulls out, Yunjin, now a zombie, stumbles on the stairs while the mayor screams after the train. After realizing the mayor is still alive, John-Soo warns her not to stop, or they'll get snatched by the silent girls. She hesitates, but ultimately keeps it moving. The mayor desperately uses the code, the N, to get a ride, only to get devoured by zombie Yunjin. Later, inside the cockpit, Sejin demands an explanation. John-Soo repeats that the mayor is dead and insists he was never at the station. With him from the jump, she snaps, pinning John-Soo against the wall and demanding his real identity. After learning his real name, she accuses him of killing Ayu Yong-han, but our guy clarifies that he never actually claimed to be Ayu Yong-han. When Sejin threatens to boot them off the train, the MC anxiously explains their situation. If they hadn't played it that way, she wouldn't have let them on, and if they'd saved the mayor, they'd probably all be dead. Then John lands a kick on him, sending both John-Soo and Minchin rolling onto the floor. He tries to clear the air by bringing up her interview, recalling she once said free rides depend on the passenger situation because everyone hits a rough patch sometimes. When he calls her by name, she blushes from embarrassment. By quoting that article headline, he gives her major goosebumps. But our hero secretly thinks to himself that the right path was a newspaper nobody actually read, only focusing on the wholesome side of society. Finally, Sejin sighs and agrees to cooperate. John-Soo asks about the destination and learns they're heading to Taejun. Curious, he asks more about the 7.5 division. When she heard from them before, they only communicated via radio, stating they needed someone to handle administrative affairs, which is why they were so pressed about the mayor. John-Soo suspects this division must be a powerhouse capable of commanding a lot of people. Suddenly, Minchin spots a silent girl outside the cockpit. Our guy signals everyone to stay quiet. Noticing the silent girl hasn't detected them yet, he secretly cooks up a plan to deal with her presence. New Master sends a new quest. Kill the silent girl within 5 minutes to get a reward that lets him see through a target's eyes. John-Soo protests, insisting it's impossible. Meanwhile, Max S. Outcast drops a competitive quest to kill the silent girl within 1 hour. This sparks a beef between New Master and Max S. Outcast. One accuses the other of setting up death trap quests for John-Soo, while the other complains. The reward is way too mid for a quest like that. Ignoring the chaos, John-Soo gathers his guts and approaches the silent girl. After realizing she can't sense him at all, he uses his skill to strip away her hearing. He taps her shoulder, making her jump and collapse in pure terror. Disoriented, she accidentally falls off the train. To confirm if she's actually dead, our guy peeks down and finds her still clinging to the train, even as her legs are getting grated against the tracks. He responds by stomping on her repeatedly and stabbing her hands multiple times. Finally, she loses her grip, falls, and bites the dust, leaving. Our hero screaming in disbelief. As a result, he bags the rewards for both quests. John-Soo returns to the cockpit, where Minchin expresses his anxiety, while Sejin praises his skills, then mentions that the 7.5 division just contacted her. They instructed her to stop at the upcoming checkpoint, but our guy quickly asks about the mayor. She explains the original plan was to go straight to Taejun, but after hearing about the mayor, the orders changed. She was told to leave the train with their mechanic. This makes John-Soo SUS, so he checks his status board. It advises the hero not to stop at the checkpoint and mentions another station between there and Taejun from the chat. He learns Sejin can solo 5 opponents in a fight. He then suggests skipping the checkpoint, arguing it's not safe. Refusing to blindly trust those people, he points out they only switched plans after hearing about the mayor, not because the train was broken. Sejin agrees, warning that getting stranded there would be a total disaster. Furthermore, the protagonist notes this division only popped up recently, so it's unlikely they've maintained the checkpoints properly in this mess. Finally, Sejin decides to go straight to Taejun. However, our hero worries if the train can stop safely. Sejin explains there's a sidetrack right past the checkpoint. If someone flips the switch to divert the train, they'll hit unfinished tracks. She concludes that even if they clear the first checkpoint, they'll be forced to stop at the second one. As the train nears the first station, the kid uses his voice amplification skill, screaming repeatedly that the train is malfunctioning. The guards at the checkpoint get confused since they receive no such orders. Jeon-soo heads back to the cockpit and explains that this will mess with the second checkpoint's reaction. The train disappears through the tunnel, climbing to the mountain peak and reaching the top of the mountain. He then leaves, trusting Min-chun to handle things. They arrive at the checkpoint. Sejin explains they haven't been spotted yet because she cut the train's speed way back early on. They decide to approach via the hillside for better cover. Soon, they spot 4 soldiers nearby discussing a plan to kill everyone except the conductor. On Sejin's signal, both of them lunge into the attack. The MC confidently flicks the safety on a soldier's gun, while Sejin kicks another one, sending him rolling down the hill. She then asks who's the mastermind behind this massacre. The remaining 2 soldiers hesitate, but Sejin quickly pistol whips one, sending him tumbling down too. The last soldier starts begging for mercy, but she tosses him down as well, leaving no one left to grill. Jeon-soo picks up a gun and asks Sejin if she knows how to shoot, explaining that they have to get more aggressive now. Moving forward, they run into a pack of zombies slowly crawling up the hill. Our hero urges her to hurry. The checkpoint needs to be cleared ASAP. They finally reach the main building where the troops are stationed. The guy counts at least 10 or more inside. He and Sejin take their positions, noting the zombies will definitely swarm the moment shots ring out. Despite the risk, the train's tight schedule forces them into the fight. Just as they're about to open fire, a soldier spots them and shoots in their direction, igniting a chaotic gunfight. A few soldiers drop, but Jeon-soo gets hit too. During the skirmish, he asks the homies if they can help him scout the checkpoint, but they can only see in third-person view. Even though it's a struggle, the MC stays locked in, picking off the remaining enemies. Surprisingly, Sejin gets tagged by a bullet as well, but she reassures him it's just a graze. After a prolonged shootout, they're down to exactly 30 rounds. As the soldiers begin to advance, the 2 decide to fall back. While running, Jeon-soo begs the homies for a quest, but nobody wants to waste cash on a dead man walking. Meanwhile, the loyal fan maxed out is broke and calls for others to chip in, but gets no response. The guy grits his teeth, realizing the audience only cares about the entertainment. He wonders if he can offer some survival guarantee to convince them to help. With no other choice, he decides to lure the zombies from the cliff toward the soldiers. Believing he can flip the script, he screams to draw the undead horde's attention. His Excel skill stats skyrocket instantly, leaving Sejin confused, so the MC explains the survival plan, leading the zombies straight to the troops. He dashes toward the enemy, then shocks everyone with a super high jump, leaping over the soldiers and reaching the main building with the zombie horde trailing behind. The homies comment that his physical ability has peaked thanks to high Excel stats inside the building. Our hero hears the chaos erupting behind him. Meanwhile, Sejin struggles to fend off the zombies, but he arrives just in time to save her. He tells her to hop on his back, but she hesitates without waiting any longer. Jeon-soo hoists her up and starts booking it. After a few minutes, they reach the manual switch. Jeon-soo tells Sejin to crank it while he holds off the zombies. He listens to the sounds of the battle between the soldiers and the undead. On the other side, Sejin finishes turning the switch, and the hero immediately picks her up again. Suddenly, they hear the whistle of their train, but quickly realize it's moving way too fast. Observing the situation, they see Min-chun lying on the floor of the cockpit, which is now covered in blood. The train shows no sign of stopping, so Jeon-soo rushes after it while still carrying Sejin. With his Excel stat at 73 and only 35 seconds left, he grips Sejin tight and lures even more zombies to farm Excel points. The homies in the chat suggest ditching her, but suddenly his Excel hits 90 with only 14 seconds to go. Now with physical abilities peaking at 1,000, the guy lets out a roar and hurls Sejin toward the train. She slams hard against the hull, but manages to cling on tight. Meanwhile, Jeon-soo sprints and leaps, barely catching a hold of the train. Once aboard, he pulls Sejin up and 3 of the homies each send him a gem as a reward. When they reach the cockpit door, they find it smeared with blood. Inside, Min-chun lies unconscious, covered in blood. Jeon-soo checks for bite marks, while one viewer suggests bashing Min-chun's head in, but gets shut down immediately by others. Realizing Min-chun only fainted, the guy decides he'll deal with it later if the kid actually turns into a zombie. Suddenly, Min Chun stirs awake, making the MC brandish his gun just in case. Luckily, Min Chun is still lucid, so John Soo grabs his face and grills him on whether he got bitten. Min Chun explains that he fought a zombie, but slipped and hit his head. Suddenly, our hero pulls the kid into a hug. One viewer insists on a closer inspection. So John Soo double-checks Min Chun, but finds nothing concerning. Relieved, he hugs Min Chun once more. Min Chun asks how they got on the train, but Sejin is still curious, questioning John Soo on how he managed to launch her into the air. Min Chun is stunned hearing this, while the guy tries to stop her from getting the wrong idea. Min Chun warns John Soo not to treat people like objects, forcing John Soo to explain it was all about survival and adrenaline, which actually impresses Sejin. Suddenly, someone from the 7.5 Division connects via radio. Yon Suan says quickly. Identifying himself as a passenger, the division officer demands his ID, so he claims he's just a civilian. Explaining that they fixed the train and stopped at the second checkpoint, he made up a story about meeting mysterious warriors fighting zombies, and though they escaped with soldiers' help, he was the only survivor. He added that the conductor started the train, but had to hop off after getting bitten. The guy pretended to lose signal, but the officer warned they'd deal with him once he reached Taejun Station after the call ended. John Soo firmly stated they couldn't take the train all the way to Taejun. They agreed to stop at a botanical garden near the city instead of going further. Upon arrival, weapons ready, they entered the botanical garden, which was eerily quiet. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound coming from nearby. Oddly enough, only John Soo heard it. He asked the homies what was up, but they weren't much help, making him lose his cool. Sejin remarked that as long as they didn't get lost, they'd be out of the garden in 20 minutes. Meanwhile, Min Chun studied the map and volunteered to lead the way. As he stepped up, something attacked, but his steel pipe blocked the blow. The guy quickly pulled him back, and they both saw a tree branch. Looking closer, John Soo shouted at the viewers in frustration because everything was becoming too much to handle. A giant tree monster called the Brutal Tree suddenly appeared right in front of them. It lashed out with a branch, forcing Sejin to counterattack. Meanwhile, John Soo observed that while the monster's attacks were fast, its overall movement was quite slow. Deciding to find another way, the MC followed Min Chun. They hurried forward, taking another turn, but quickly encountered another brutal tree, forcing them to hang a left. There, more and more brutal trees started giving chase, but the guy remained confident they could escape. Suddenly, a tree struck him, sending John Soo sprawling to the ground. Now the tree stood between Min Chun and the rest of the group. The hero shouted for Min Chun to run on his own, promising they'd meet at the entrance. Though Min Chun hesitated, he finally listened and booked it toward the exit. Meanwhile, Sejin attacked the tree with her rifle, but John Soo was confused because his aggro skill wasn't working. One of the homies pointed out that the monsters weren't targeting him specifically. They didn't have eyes or ears to track him. He kicked the tree, instantly triggering the Excel skill. He quickly stopped Sejin from attacking further, explaining that the monsters only sense them through direct contact. The two decided to turn back and circle around the area. Elsewhere, Min Chun had reached the entrance. He saw the brutal tree behind him stop at the threshold. Suspecting it was because there was no soil outside. Worried about the MC and Sejin, Min Chun went to a nearby convenience store. There, he grabbed a few bottles of liquor, a pack of towels, and a lighter. Returning to the nursery, he lit the items and tossed them at a brutal tree. The tree thrashed around violently. Min Chun lit another one, causing both to scramble and then explode. Realizing he had set all the nearby trees on fire, Min Chun panicked and tried to run but tripped. Luckily, someone doused the flames with water. An old man holding a hose scolded Min Chun, telling him to get out of there immediately. After an explosion, the old man grabbed Min Chun's hand and pulled him away to an unfamiliar place. Not far from there, he opened a manhole cover and pushed Min Chun down into an underground shelter. Completely exhausted, Min Chun listened as the old man explained that he had built this place before the world fell apart. The quirky old man asked if Min Chun was wearing a school uniform. Min Chun confirmed and tried to force himself up to save John Soo, but fell right back on the bed. The old man advised him to give up, insisting that anyone caught by those monsters was as good as dead. Once they started moving, when Min Chun insisted on helping his friend, the old man barked at him to wait until dawn, explaining the monsters sleep when it's light out. He told Min Chun to have faith in his friends, then gave him food to regain his strength for tomorrow's search. As Min Chun started eating, the old man encouraged him to take his time. The old man casually asked Min Chun which way they came in. Min Chun replied they entered through the back gate. He was surprised when the old man correctly guessed they took the train, saying that's the only way people arrive lately. He then asked how many were in the group, and Minchin said 3, including himself, putting away the food box. The old man casually asked what was in Minchin's bag. Minchin nervously explained he only had food and personal items. The old man reassured him he wasn't going to take anything and told him to ask for whatever he needed, even giving up the bed for him while he took a floor mat. The lights went out, and both prepared for sleep. Minchin tossed and turned, unable to sleep, thinking about the old man's generosity, sharing both food and a place to stay. Even so, he worried for his friends, imagining John-Soo and Sejin running on empty stomachs. He sat up, intending to grab a food box for them, but guilt stopped him in his tracks. He went back to bed, unaware that the old man was still awake. Meanwhile, John-Soo and Sejin were still trying to lose the brutal trees. The guy realized these monsters wake up others nearby, creating a chain reaction. Then Sejin ran up, saying she dropped her weapon when she fell. Impressed John-Soo if he knew where to go, a homie suggested finding an axe. But John-Soo doubted there'd be one around here. Suddenly, he spotted a brutal tree moving in the opposite direction. Looking closely, he saw that familiar white teddy bear, hanging from a branch. Seizing the chance, the guy grabbed Sejin and chased after the bear. While running, he counted his gems, 37 in total, and decided he'd open whatever he found. Unluckily, he found a supply crate, but the price was 72 gems. In despair, our MC collapsed to his knees. Cursing his luck, Sejin, looking from behind, thought he'd lost it from too much stress. She slapped him to snap him out of it, telling him to keep it together, then dragged him away from the nearby monsters. John-Soo felt hopeless and briefly considered using his Excel skill, but immediately dismissed it as too dangerous. He decided they needed fire to deal with the brutal trees. Right then, someone splashed water on the monsters, making them stop cold. A guy with a ponytail waves his hand at them. Our hero is stunned to see another person in this place. The ponytail guy leads them to a shelter. Back at the old man's hideout, Minchin feels weak and completely drained. Seeing him struggle, the old man advises him to sleep, telling him to leave his worries behind. Despite his efforts, Minchin keeps resisting sleep, forcing the old man to stand up. Surprised by the kid's endurance, he assures him everything will be over by morning. When Minchin asks what he did to him, the old man says he's just saving him, then points to the food containers, revealing they were laced with poison made from monster leaves that absorbs through the skin. Minchin is now paralyzed and can't move. The old man gently lays him on the bed and tucks him in, while wearing a sinister smirk. Minchin desperately wants to warn the others, but he passes out cold. Meanwhile, the ponytail guy opens the entrance to an underground bunker. Sejin climbs down first, and our guy firmly insists the stranger goes next. After a bit of protest, the guy complies, and John-Soo goes last, closing the door behind them. Once inside, the ponytail guy introduces himself as Ji-Sung Iu. Then Sejin introduces herself, and our guy does the same. Ji-Sung greets John-Soo with a sly smile. Now the three are sitting together in Ji-Sung's place. John-Soo and Sejin quickly learn Ji-Sung lives there solo. When Sejin asks for some water, Ji-Sung opens a cabinet and tells them to help themselves. But she chooses to use her own water bottle. She and our hero both feel it's best not to bother their savior. Ji-Sung just laughs and tells them to speak up if they need anything. However, Sejin feels something is off, and John-Soo admits he's on high alert too. Later, Ji-Sung brings out a mat for himself and gives the bed to the other two for the night. After getting a nod from John-Soo, our hero leans his back against the wall, slowly closing his eyes. Before long, the homie starts shouting for him to wake up, and he snaps awake to find Ji-Sung tucking him in with a blanket. The viewers can't help but troll John-Soo about the situation. Ji-Sung offers a pillow and sheets to help him rest more comfortably. The guy lies down on a rug, realizing he can't even remember the last time he slept like this. He drifts off almost instantly, but homie warns him not to catch Z's so easily. Glancing over, he sees Sejin fast asleep and thinks she must be exhausted from trying to keep up with his insane stats. He pinches himself to try and stay awake. When he's sure Ji-Sung is asleep, our MC quietly gets up to scout the room. He finds a shelter way too well equipped, which raises a red flag. Ji-Sung doesn't just seem familiar with the brutal trees. He even left the shelter at night to help them, which makes zero sense to him. Checking the food containers, John-Soo notices the logos on the lids, and the bodies don't match, showing Ji-Sung reseal the tops. After swapping the contents, acting immediately, he grabs Ji-Sung's hands to keep him from moving. Afterwards, she panics, but then realizes the sound is coming from John-Soo's watch. He had set an alarm before sleeping. Meanwhile, Ji-Sung demands to be untied, but Sejin ignores him. He listens for any movement outside, but hears nothing. She shakes our hero to wake him up, but he still doesn't react. Grilling Ji-sung, she wants to know what he did to Jong-soo. He insists he couldn't have done anything while tied up like this. Losing patience, Sejin grabs him, demanding the truth. Ji-sung finally reveals that the container Jong-soo touched last night was coated in poison. Sejin snaps and demands the antidote immediately. Ji-sung just tilts his head and says there isn't one, earning him a lightning-fast kick. She lunges at him, ready to throw hands, and threatens to never untie him without the antidote. He slyly responds that she doesn't need to untie him at all. In an instant, his body bursts into intense flames. Ji-sung tells her she should have tossed his salad, explaining he always hides a lighter in each glove and wears flammable clothes. Sejin stares in shock as he calmly explains he's just tinder, and everything else in the bunker is too. Sejin tries to smother the fire with a blanket, but it's no use. So she grabs a hose and blasts Ji-sung, putting out the flames. Unfortunately, this gives him the opening to break free and grab her. She quickly kicks him off, but starts coughing uncontrollably in the thick smoke. Losing track of Ji-sung, she's caught off guard when he suddenly attacks from behind, now wearing a mask. He chokes her and pins her against the wall. Sejin struggles, trying to reach for a food container, but fails. Ji-sung remarks that they're low on fertilizer, and the two of them arrived just in time. He adds that if she had just let him burn earlier, he would have been the one used as fertilizer. Sejin desperately tries to call for Jong-soo, but can only rasp his name. Ji-sung explains this poison works like a sleeping pill, knocking most adults out for half a day or more. He tells her to go to sleep, but warns she won't live long enough for the drugs to fully kick in. Her vision blurs, but suddenly light floods in from outside. Looking up, she sees Jong-soo opening the door. Our hero steps down, leaving Ji-sung stunned because he can't believe he's still awake. Ji-sung presses him on how he resisted the poison, but our guy just shrugs, saying if it were a bit stronger, he'd probably be a goner. With one swift move, he snaps Ji-sung's arm. Ji-sung tries to punch him with the other hand, but fails. Jong-soo rips off Ji-sung's mask and grabs him by the throat. Ji-sung starts acting like a zombie, but Sejin bashes him with a food container, then punches him down and coldly stomps on him. Our guy quickly stops her and washes her hands, warning she touched the poison. She complains about him sleeping too long, but he replies he woke up right on time. To make sure Ji-sung can't escape, our hero breaks his legs, making Ji-sung scream in agony. He notes the irony. Ji-sung set himself on fire without hesitating, but can't handle the pain inflicted by others. As our guy snaps another bone, Ji-sung screams again and calls for his grandpa. Jong-soo coldly asks who else is involved. Meanwhile, outside, the old man is digging a hole. In the pit, Minchin is tied up tight, and the old man is shoveling dirt over him. As Minchin struggles and demands answers, the old man calmly says he'll become fertilizer as the brutal roots begin crawling toward Minchin. The old man explains that the roots only move during the day to suck nutrients from bodies just like his. Minchin screams to be let go, but the old man describes how the trees need nutrients to grow and will die without them, as Minchin tries to break free. The old man stabs him with the shovel. Minchin collapses, screaming in pain, as the old man tells him he'll live forever as part of nature by becoming fertilizer. Minchin forces himself up before the roots can reach him and lunges straight at the old man. The old man swings the shovel, but Minchin quickly pivots so the blow hits his bindings, setting his hands free. He then grabs the shovel and yanks it hard, pulling the old man down into the pit he just dug, stepping closer. Minchin grabs the old man's head, grilling him on where his friends are. The old man only gives a cryptic reply that if they met his grandson, they're in deep trouble, suddenly. The old man smashes a rock against Minchin's head and lunges for the shovel, but before he can reach it, Minchin kicks him away and seizes the weapon. He then bashes the old man with the shovel, crushing his legs. The old man warns that if Minchin kills him, he'll never find his friends. Airing the shovel at the old man, Minchin coldly asks again where they are. The old man insists there's no point in telling him, but finally reveals the broadleaf gallery to the northwest of the main gate. Crawling toward Minchin, the old man says a kid like him would never dare to kill someone. But Minchin, with a cold stare, raises the shovel and declares he's at an age where he does whatever he wants. He recalls that direction is full of tree-lined paths and then slams the shovel blade into the old man. Meanwhile, Jong-soo sits before the 72-gem supply crate, lamenting the price and trying to convince the homies to drop more gems by hyping it up, saying there's definitely something amazing inside. Nobody buys it. He tries to lift the crate, but it won't budge. The homie suggests playing roulette, implying that our guy will encounter a gambling machine later where he can bet his gems. With no other choice, Jian-Su kneels in despair. Suddenly, only one comments, offering to lend him some gems with the promise to garnish his future earnings. Jian-Su lights up at the offer. Only one agrees to lend him 35 gems just this once, warning he might regret it later. Regardless, our guy accepts the loan. Afterwards, our protagonist returns to Sejin, proudly holding his new weapon, and tells her he went out to find it. Meanwhile, Minshin escapes from the pit, leaving the old man behind as bait for the brutal roots. A while later, Jian-Su and Sejin find Minshin lying on the ground, bleeding out. They try to wake him up, but he doesn't react. Our guy picks him up while Sejin suggests taking him to a medical facility, likely near the main gate. Luckily, they spot a warehouse. Jian-Su breaks the lock with his new weapon, pulls out a wheelbarrow, and tells Sejin to help load Minshin in. She objects, but with no other choice, she sucks it up and follows along. They finally reach a medical center. Seeing no one inside, they lay Minshin on an exam table. When our hero finds nothing useful to treat the wounds, he decides to check the other rooms down the hall. A strange noise makes him feel uneasy. He can't gamble with Minshin's safety. He rushes back to Sejin and urges her to bounce immediately, telling her to grab Minshin's legs as they prepare to move. A girl with purple hair peeks at them from the hallway, drawn in by the scent of blood. Jian-Su and Sejin shield Minshin and warn the purple-hair girl to back off, saying they're leaving. However, she steps closer and claims the patient will be toast if they go, explaining that Minshin seems to be in shock from blood loss. Sejin immediately gets a bad vibe from her, but the girl approaches and admits that people usually say she's a bit loopy. After that, she flashes her student ID, revealing her name is Kim Ji-young, a fourth-year nursing student. Sejin asks if she can treat Minshin, but our guy stands frozen, turning to ask the homie's opinion. He asks if there are support classes in this game, but they tell him the setting is random, whether one is a villain or support. Ji-young's attitude turns weird as she corners them, questioning if they just let Minshin die. She warns that without immediate treatment, he won't make it. Then she makes a creepy face, speculating if they plan to just shove pills down his throat and wrap bandages around the wound. All the homies and our hero are sketched out by her behavior. Suddenly, Ji-young's voice shifts. She calmly says she's finally found a living patient, begging them to let her help. Later, Minshin hears Jian-Su's voice through his delirium. He sees the old man stabbing him with a shovel, forcing him to become fertilizer. Minshin screams and snaps awake, finding his friends by his side. Our hero tells him he lost a lot of blood. They weren't sure if he'd pull through. Meanwhile, Sejin adds that he's been out for nearly half a day. Tears well up in Minshin's eyes, but he quickly asks about the old man. Jian-Su realizes Minshin must have been the one who took care of the old man in that pit. Suddenly, Minshin asks where they are and who that purple-hair girl is. Ji-young steps up, introduces herself, and explains that she saved him. Minshin nervously thanks her, and she beams with happiness. The guy wonders if he should bring her along, but tells himself characters like her might cause drama under pressure. As they leave, Jian-Su tells Minshin to hop on his back, but the kid hesitates. Jian-Su points at the wheelbarrow, asking if he wants to ride in that thing again, making Minshin agree to the piggyback. The protagonist thanks Ji-young and Sejin, hand her some supplies. They chat as they leave the medical center, while Ji-young watches them go. Later, Sejin remarks that this city has no zombies, but Jian-Su warns her to stay on guard. Minshin says he can walk on his own now, so our hero sets him down. After walking for a bit, Sejin finds some gas canisters and says they can cook on the stove. They enter a restaurant and see nothing unusual. Minshin is curious about the fridge, but Jian-Su stops him, warning that it's not working and might not be safe. Sejin points out that the place has basic ingredients and 2 packs of instant noodles, deciding they need more than that. The guy heads to a nearby convenience store to scavenge food for the 3 of them, grabbing lunchboxes, meatballs, and other items. As he turned to leave, he spotted Ji-young watching him from the doorway. Startled, he asked if she had been stalking him. She nodded and stepped inside. Anxiously, she explained she needed to monitor the patient and was worried about Min-chun, so she asked to join them. Our hero suggested she should be asking Min-chun instead, then wondered if she viewed him as the squad leader. Observing closely, he realized this was the real Ji-young, confident when she felt useful, but insecure if she thought she was losing her spot. He secretly admitted she had skills, then told her she could tag along, but only on one condition. Jian-Su returned to the restaurant, bringing enough food for everyone. Taking command, he told Sejin to get the pots and frying pans ready. With a flex, he said he had experience living solo, so they could trust his cooking game. Promising to be done in 30 minutes, our hero started prepping the meal. He cooked with surprisingly high-tier skills, leaving everyone shook as he mastered the available ingredients in what he called a grand feast. The Jiangsu convenience store special was ready. Everyone dug in and quickly realized the food was fire. The protagonist finished his meal at a record-breaking speed. So Min-chun handed him water to keep him from choking. Then Jiangsu stood up and told Sejin that if he did anything out of line, it was for a good reason. He told them to enjoy the food and headed out. Back at the convenience store, he found Ji Young waiting for him, looking genuinely hyped to see him. The guy recalled the condition he set for her was simply to wait for 30 minutes. Her patience confirmed that he could keep her in check. Spotting her student ID on the ground, he noticed she had covered part of it. On the student ID, Ji Young explained she was actually a sophomore, not a senior. She had been with her upperclassmen. But when they ran into soldiers, only the seniors were taken away. That's why she hid her ID number, even though it didn't do much. However, Jiangsu firmly told her to keep the ID and officially welcomed her to the team. Ji Young beamed, promising to do her best even as a sophomore. As they started walking, she shyly asked if she could call him Appa Jiangsu. He wasn't used to those kinds of honorifics and felt a bit cringe. Later, when everyone gathered, Min-chun and Sejin were surprised to see Ji Young with him. Our hero explained she had helped them before and was ditched by her old group. He urged them to trust his judgment regarding Ji Young. Min-chun accepted her immediately, and Sejin followed suit. Next, the protagonist explained the area was infested with brutal trees, which made Min-chun realize why the city was a zombie-free zone. With his new weapon, the guy slashed at a nearby tree, and a strange liquid leaked out, proving it wasn't a normal tree. On top of that, he noticed red marks appearing after every hit, and the numbers changing depending on how many times he slashed. Suddenly, Sejin called him inside to listen to a broadcast from the 7.5 Division. The message advised all survivors to head to military-established refugee camps with assembly points at train stations and bus terminals. Sejin added she found a battery-powered radio while he was at the convenience store. That's why it was picking up signals. However, the protagonist wonders how this division managed to deploy troops at almost all major facilities, especially since they aren't the only military force in the country. Regardless, he decides they should head to the bus terminal. Later, as they head out, Sejin asks if he has a plan. Our hero explains they'll stop near the terminal and try to find a car that still runs. Ji Young is shocked by the idea of stealing, but Min-chun reassures her. She says they'll only take abandoned vehicles. However, before setting off, they decide to swing by Ji Young's place. She leads them through the streets, and as they get close, they hear someone screaming nearby. Jiangsu quickly pulls Ji Young back and peeks out to check, seeing a group of 3 nearby who look totally lost. To stay safe, Jiangsu decides they should wait until that group clears out. Once he sees it's clear, he signals everyone to move. They soon reach a manhole cover. Ji Young's place is located underground. She pulls out a tool scavenged from a construction site and uses it to pry the heavy lid open. As night falls, the brutal trees begin to move, so our hero directs everyone into the bunker immediately. Ji Young climbs down last, and following his lead, she closes the manhole cover. Then she shines a UV flashlight on a brutal root tied beneath the lid. The roots begin to move, grabbing the manhole cover from the outside and pulling it shut tight. Ji Young explains that when you shine UV light on the roots, they automatically seal any gaps where light peeks through, mistaking it for sunlight since these trees only grow underground. The whole group is floored, and the protagonist admits she's a straight-up genius. Inside, everyone is pleasantly surprised by how Ji Young decorated her underground home. Jiangsu stumbles upon some notes. Detailed research on the brutal trees. There are extra beds, and Ji Young shyly admits this is her first time hosting guests. Min-chun asks if they can stay the night, but the guy simply pushes him onto a bed, making the decision for him. The others soon pick their sleeping spots too. Before drifting off, Jiangsu asks the homies to wake him if anything goes down, though he doubts anything will go sideways. A little later, a woman's voice screams for him to wake up, and he struggles to open his eyes. Scanning the room, he notices a brutal root dangling from above, reacting in a weird way. The homies breathe a sigh of relief, and one mentions that Maxed Out is almost out of cash. Jiangsu realizes it wasn't the homies who woke him, but Maxed Out, who spent a ton of gems. To activate the speaker function and talk to him, he immediately wakes Ji Young, who startles him by waking up with a terrifying expression. He urges her to deal with the root, but she explains it's just reacting to the rainwater. Ji Young reassures him that the root needs a massive amount of water to regrow, so a small leak isn't a threat. However, the rain soon turns into a downpour, and water starts gushing into the sewer in larger amounts. Maxed Out uses the voice feature again to wake our hero once more. Jansu sees the water level rising fast and immediately wakes everyone up, telling them to pack their gear as the water is already knee-deep. He concludes that they're in a massive underground water reservoir. He asks the homies if they know how the brutal trees react when it rains, but the answers are all over the place. Meanwhile, Ji-young hands him a raincoat. As the situation gets even worse, the guy directs everyone to climb the ladder and get ready to bail. A viewer comments that this rain might not be natural, suggesting a monster is messing with the local environment. Suddenly, Jansu grabs a rock and hurls it into the water. To their horror, a crocodile-like monster surfaces. A homie wonders if it's El Croco, a beast that usually spawns in flooded areas. Ji-young quickly alerts everyone. But the manhole cover is jammed and won't open. Jansu realizes there must be a brutal tree standing right on top of it, which has become heavy from soaking up the rain. Thinking fast, he asks Ji-young if the tree roots will grow instantly with this much water, and she confirms they will. Raising his new axe, the MC tells everyone to get away from the ladder and prepare for action. With his axe, Jansu hacks through the tree roots, making them splash down into the water below. For a few minutes, nothing happens. So Jansu turns to Ji-young and asks again if the roots will really grow. She assures him there's a high chance. Suddenly, the roots begin to expand and twist rapidly, entering a fierce battle with the crocodile lurking underwater. The crocodile bites into the roots. But as the roots suck up more water, they fight back and eventually swallow the monster whole. When the rain stops, that brutal tree has grown terrifyingly huge. Deciding that letting it run wild is too dangerous, Jansu readies his axe and jumps down to face it. Meanwhile, 6 of the homies watching, including Maxed Out and New Master, announce a co-op quest to destroy the brutal tree for a 20-gem reward. Hyped up, our guy swings his axe at the freakish tree, triggering his aggro skill. After the second hit, the tree lashes back, but he dodges and keeps up the pressure. During the fight, he realizes his axe has a hidden ability. With every consecutive hit, he feels power building up. On the 10th hit, he unleashes a devastating blow that leaves his teammates stunned. A homie names the weapon the Axe of 10. Our guy quickly figures out that no matter where he slashes, the 10th hit always releases an explosive cutting force. The brutal tree desperately sucks up the last bit of water, but Jansu keeps pushing. On the 10th swing, the axe unleashes another explosive strike, finally hacking the tree to pieces, exhausted. He keeps chopping until the carcass is nothing but small scraps, then collapses onto the ground. He clears the quest and bags the 20-gem reward with a satisfied smirk. Catching his breath, Jansu calls the others down. The group gathers around the down tree. Ji-young excitedly collects specimens for her experiments. Our guy announces it's now safe to move out since the rain has stopped and the croc is toast. They soon enter a clothing store. Min-shun picks out a new bag while Jansu grabs a baseball bat. Suddenly, they hear screaming outside. The group quickly takes cover and watches 2 men talking. As they pass by, after a few minutes, the strangers leave. Our guy notes that these dudes aren't the same ones they saw before, but based on their look, they're probably from the same crew. Then Jansu notices Min-shun has gone pale. Jansu doesn't get why Min-shun is acting so weird. Ji-young pokes Min-shun's cheek while Sejin gently asks the kid what he's so afraid of. Min-shun stays silent, but our guy peeks outside and confirms everything is clear. As they step out, a man in a uniform suddenly screams and runs toward them begging for help, but then collapses when his leg bone snaps. A moment later, a blue-haired guy appears, cursing out the fallen man. Seeing Jansu's group, he calls his lackeys over. Sensing trouble, Jansu quietly tells everyone to get ready to run, but then the blue-haired guy recognizes Min-shun. Min-shun starts breaking into a cold sweat, and Jansu presses him on whether he knows these guys. Receiving no answer, Jansu tells the blue-haired guy firmly that they're leaving right now, and there's no need to come any closer. The blue-haired stranger claims Min-shun is his homie, but Jansu claps back that Min-shun doesn't want to see him. Min-shun remains silent, leaving our guy confused as he raises his axe. Jansu warns them they'll regret it if they keep pushing, but the blue-haired guy just mocks him. He raises his bat, counts to 3, and lunges, but Jansu counters with his axe, disarming him and giving him a solid hit. The blue-haired guy's lackey rushes in, but gets knocked out immediately too. Soon, the whole gang is laid out flat on the ground. Even as the blue-haired guy keeps cussing, our guy lands another blow, teasing that he's worse than a Roomba. Suddenly, the blue-haired guy struggles up and screams at Jansu to shut up, claiming he has no idea who he's messing with. Calmly, Jansu asks back if the guy knows who he's up against, thinking to himself that he's the main character here. The blue-haired guy trembles but tries to swing his bat again, only to be shut down instantly when the lackeys rush in. Jansu handles them like it's nothing. Now covered in blood, Jansu approaches the blue-haired guy, who is screaming for him to stay away. Ji-young steps up and asks if she should help the injured, but quickly adds that maybe bad people shouldn't be treated. Our guy shrugs, saying that healing people who are just going to get killed anyway is a waste of time. With no other choice, the blue-haired guy begs Minchin for help. Jansu asks Minchin how he knows these punks. Minchin finally confesses that he used to hang with them for a short bit. But some kind people helped him and advised him to cut ties. He adds that one of those who helped had a cousin who's a cop, which is the only reason these guys finally left him alone. The blue-haired guy tries to negotiate, but our guy stomps on his face and asks if Minchin's story is legit. The guy nods frantically as Jansu raises his axe to deliver the finishing blow. Sejin tells him to hold up. He stops and she coldly points out they should grill the blue-haired guy for info first. The blue-haired guy, now tied to a tree, is screaming like crazy for help. Jansu calmly tells him to pipe down, warning he'll wake the roots if he keeps thrashing. Leaning in, our guy explains he's talking about the tree monsters, and the blue-haired dude doesn't realize. The roots still move underground, even during the day. If he keeps struggling, they'll pop up and turn him into fertilizer. Our guy orders him to spill everything, even though deep down he knows the blue-haired guy is probably just capping. The blue-haired guy keeps screaming for help, but Jansu reminds him that the last guy he handled said the exact same thing. Terrified, the blue-haired guy finally admits his gang is called Black Tattoo and has about 20 members. When asked if they've been killing other survivors, he explains their truck flipped, so they need replacement parts to fix it and head to the safe zone. Jansu says thanks, then leads the group away, leaving the blue-haired guy behind, only to double back and finish him off. Later, a Scar guy discovers the blue-haired guy's body tied to the tree. A lackey notes he was killed by another group of survivors. The Scar guy vows to find whoever's responsible. Another lackey rushes over in a panic, reporting they've found more bodies. Soon, the Black Tattoo gang finds the bodies of the blue-haired guy's crew along with a man in the uniform. One of them wonders if the other group did this, but the leader brushes it off, thinking the body would have been ditched if that were the case. Noticing the body is still warm, he orders his men to toss the area, believing the culprits are nearby. Meanwhile, Min Shun tells the others that Sanjin Ju, the Scar guy, is likely the leader, according to Min Shun. Most of his gang members are pretty ruthless. Our guy reassures him that even without Min Shun's history, guys like that would have caused trouble anyway. Min Shun explains the boss likes to split the gang into squads: patrol, guard, and special ops. The blue-haired guy's crew was part of the patrol squad, specializing in scouting, while other squads guard and loot the surrounding areas. Finally, the group comes across a blood-stained, abandoned truck. Min Shun suspects it's the vehicle the blue-haired guy mentioned. Our guy wonders if this mess was caused by the infection. They find the vehicle is missing key parts, making Jansu curse the former owners as idiots for trashing a perfectly good ride. They determine that the undead attacked the truck, and then the Black Tattoo gang stripped it for parts. As they keep moving, Jansu suddenly spots someone peeping at them. He approaches with his axe in hand, making the stranger cower in fear. Pressing for an identity, our guy listens as the man explains he was in the truck during the ambush, luckily survived, and has been laying low ever since. Jansu asks Min Shun if he recognizes this guy, but Min Shun shakes his head. Jansu notices the man is wearing the exact same uniform as the survivor they met earlier. The man in uniform recounts that their group was attacked by zombies while driving through. The tattooed gang showed up pretending to help, but then flipped and attacked them. He asks if they've seen anyone else wearing his uniform, but our guy keeps quiet about the dead man and instead asks where the tattooed gang went. The man in uniform says they headed south, deciding to avoid a confrontation. Jansu suggests heading north. The survivor warns they won't make it north without a car. He explains the area is crawling with vine monsters that attack anyone on foot but ignore cars. Jansu checks in with the homies. They confirm these monsters act like sensors, similar to carnivorous plants reacting to movement. They also mention these monsters are scattered all over the place, so it's the same wherever they go. With no better option, our guy decides they'll have to head south, even though Min Shun warns the tattooed gang is dangerous. Jansu asserts they can handle them together. He then asks the man in uniform for his name. The survivor grins and introduces himself as Oh Young-jun. Jansu thanks him for the info, but Young-jun anxiously asks what's going to happen to him. Jansu points out that his arm is infected, so they can't take him along, to everyone's surprise. Young-jun offers to let them chop off his arm if that's what it takes. Soo and Ji Young start prepping for Young Jun's amputation. Ji Young lists all the risks like high infection and no anesthesia, but our guy cuts her off before she makes Young Jun spiral even more. He ties Young Jun's arm tightly to the table while Young Jun grits his teeth, declaring his resolve to survive at all costs. Our hero hands the axe to Ji Young. She disinfects it thoroughly. Meanwhile, he calls for support from the homies, who issue a quest. If Soo severs Young Jun's arm, on exactly the 5th strike, Young Jun will be able to move pain-free for 1 hour as a reward. Specifically, Green Lunatics set this challenge. When the axe is ready, Ji Young hands it back to Soo. He checks if she's ready. But as she goes to cover Young Jun's eyes, Soo gently corrects her. She needs to hold his arm steady instead. He takes a deep breath. Our protagonist raises the axe, determined to make the 5th strike the decisive one. The room is filled with Young Jun screams as Soo performs the gruesome task. Outside, Min Chun and Sejin turn pale at the horrific sounds, grateful that Soo volunteered for the job so they didn't have to witness it. When the screaming finally stops, Ji Young steps out and invites them inside. They see the surgery was a success. Young Jun's arm has been cleanly removed, leaving only the thumb on the hand. They agree to wait 5 minutes before deciding whether or not to leave him behind. But Young Jun suddenly bolts up like nothing happened and starts swinging his arm around. However, our hero isn't sure what will happen once the hour is up. Just then, a crashing sound from outside grabs their attention. Soo spots 2 men stripping parts from a truck. One grumbles about the boss's obsession with the vehicle, while the other, wearing a mask, insists the fridge inside is worth a fortune these days. Both seem disappointed with their leader. The protagonist tells the group these guys are members of the Black Tattoo Gang. To avoid detection, Sejin points out that moving the whole group would blow their cover, so Young Jun volunteers to tail the 2 men. He sneaks out to observe, but the Black Tattoo captain, Sang Jin, suddenly appears. He claims he's looking for the enemies who took down 3 of their men, scaring the other 2 members. They protest, not wanting to face the boss's wrath, but Sang Jin reassures them. He's confident he'll settle everything before the boss finds out. Sang Jin and his squad head toward Soo's position, while the other 2 members return to the boss. Young Jun weighs whether to go back to the group or keep following those 2 members. Ultimately, he decides to follow them a bit further before heading back. To his surprise, he finds the Black Tattoo members being absolutely wrecked by Soo's group. Meanwhile, our hero realizes this captain, Sang Jin, isn't nearly as tough as he thought. Sang Jin asks Soo if he's the one who killed his underlings. Our guy gives a nonchalant nod. When Sang Jin sees Min Chun taking down more of his men, he clicks his tongue in annoyance, but Soo reminds him to focus on the real threat. Him. Suddenly, Sang Jin spots Young Jun and, in a desperate move, grabs him from behind, hitting him in the neck and holding him hostage. He threatens Soo, warning that if he comes any closer, he'll kill Young Jun. Disappointed to see a gang captain stoop to this level, our hero keeps walking forward without flinching. Sang Jin backs away, still using Young Jun as a shield. But as he drew his knife and pointed it at Young Jun's chest, Young Jun told Soo not to worry about him. Without hesitation, Sang Jin stabbed Young Jun and shoved him aside to make his escape. The protagonist lunged after him and landed a heavy blow on Sang Jin's back with his axe. As Sang Jin collapsed, Soo told him that the most famous streams are the ones where people apologize. Then he forced Sang Jin to apologize for all his wrongdoings. When Sang Jin finally started apologizing, our hero demanded that he compensate Min Chun and Young Jun directly. Not satisfied yet, Soo forced him to apologize properly by slamming his head against the ground. He even helped out by repeatedly pressing Sang Jin's head down to emphasize the point. Later, Ji Young reported that Sang Jin's infection was spreading fast due to his weak immune system. Sang Jin tried to apologize again, but the protagonist said it was unnecessary and instead asked if he'd found the Black Tattoo hideout yet. Sang Jin nodded and struggled to his feet, agreeing to lead them there. Soo turned to Min Chun and told him it was time to face his past once and for all as they arrived at the Black Tattoo hideout. Young Yun boldly stepped up, shouting for the gang to show their faces. Their boss, a red-haired guy, just as Min Chun had described, stepped out, demanding to know who Young Jun was. Recognizing him as Young Hyang-gu, Young Jun silently vowed to kill this boss while the gang members burst out laughing, mocking him for thinking he could take on their leader. Unfazed, Young Hyang provoked Young Jun, asking if he wanted to die, while brandishing a steel pipe. But Young Jun let out a defiant scream, and Soo's squad charged in, taking down the gang. The protagonist threw his axe, hitting a member square in the chest, and finishing him instantly. The boss started breaking into a sweat. His confusion grew as he saw Min-chan taking down his underlings. With a determined look, Jian-su approached Yong-hyang and asked if he was the one causing trouble for Min-chan. The boss cursed and demanded to know if Min-chan had hired him for revenge. Our guy simply nodded. Raising his axe, Jian-su confronted Yong-hyang, who swung his steel pipe at him. Parrying every move, our hero blocked every strike with his axe, until Yong-hyang's steel pipe hit the ground. Realizing he was outmatched, Yong-hyang began begging Jian-su not to come any closer, desperately calling for his underlings only to see them all laid out. Meanwhile, Yong-jun shocked everyone by eating the flesh of a fallen member, leaving the protagonist stunned. This distraction gave Yong-hyang just enough time to scramble away. As soon as the boss fled, the hero turned to Yong-jun and, though grateful for his help, said he would have to be taken out. Young insisted that Yong-jun was still holding on. So Jian-su sighed and decided to focus on the boss, who had abandoned the truck. In his frantic escape, he assigned Yong-jun one final task. Elsewhere, Yong-hyang hid in a building, muttering curses at Min-chan. Suddenly, he heard Sejin and Ji-young talking nearby about checking the very building he was hiding in. Panicked, he rushed upstairs, clutching his steel pipe from his lookout point. He reassured himself that as long as he had the truck with the fridge, he could always recruit more lackeys and rebuild. Suddenly, Min-chan appeared through the door. Yong-hyang exploded in rage, screaming at Min-chan for betraying him after everything he'd done for him. But Min-chan calmly replied that if he let Yong-hyang manipulate him again, he might as well give up on his future. He pointed out that the boss had tortured so many people here, some to the point of losing their lives. When the boss screamed that Min-chan was just like them, Min-chan shot back that all he ever learned was how to smoke. He never actually hurt anyone. He challenged the boss to come down and fight, but Yong-hyang hesitated, suspecting a trap right then. After Sejin and Ji-young appeared upstairs, staring down at Yong-hyang with terrifying eyes. Terrified, he rushed downstairs only to find Min-chan blocking his path. Min-chan quickly stepped aside, slamming the door shut the moment the boss charged through, making him crash hard into the door. However, when Yong-hyang regained consciousness, he found himself sitting in the front seat of the truck. At first, he was relieved to see the masked member in the driver's seat, but that relief turned to horror when he realized he was tied up tight. Looking closer, he realized the masked person only had one arm. As the truck sped off, Yong-hyang started screaming and cussing. Trapped and helpless as the vehicle hurtled down the road, Yong-hyang frantically demanded to stop, believing something was out there. However, in a total panic, he immediately told Yong-jun not to stop. Suddenly, the truck slammed into something and came to a dead halt. Peering out the window, Yong-hyang saw massive vines charging in fast. The vines skewered Yong-jun first, then ripped right through Yong-hyang himself. A moment later, the truck exploded, leaving only fire and smoke behind. From a distance, Jian-su watched the flames and rising smoke, concluding that Yong-jun must have reached the sensor. Min-chan came closer and asked if they really didn't need that truck anymore. He explained that managing such a gas guzzler was impossible anyway. It would just burn through all their fuel. Then he teased Min-chan, wondering if the kid was actually sad about losing someone he used to know. Min-chan shook his head, feeling relieved that the old chapter was finally closed. Later, Jian-su found Sejin sitting in the driver's seat of another truck checking its condition. She said the ride was still good. But Jian-su reminded her to drive carefully because fuel would be hard to scavenge. Suddenly, Ji-young appeared, flexing her collection of wristwatches that she had scavenged from corpses. She admitted these watches were useless, and she just picked them up for fun. Our MC complimented her, saying she looked great wearing them, and asked her to pick one out for him. Deep down, Jian-su reflected on the squad's strength, grateful that everyone contributed something unique. Soon, they loaded their gear and hit the road, though he felt a bit uneasy about the next destination. He asked his friends, but they only responded with question marks. After weighing his options, Jian-su suggested heading east. Since they lacked fresh intel and needed to find another safe zone, he was betting that people were likely gathering in that direction. As they moved forward, the group hit many potholes on the road and eventually passed by the truck that Uncle Kong used to drive. Right then, a notification popped up showing that Jian-su had reached a new milestone. He knew he could now use a new skill function, and immediately after, a flood of notifications arrived. Skills were split into two types. Type 1 skills could be used continuously, while Type 2 skills were one-time use with a limit of 3 per category. He grimaced, realizing this restriction put him at a disadvantage. When Jian-su said the word offer out loud, a microphone icon appeared. He tried to offer eating food for a 100 reward, but his friends weren't down with paying him for that. The countdown timer started, and when it hit 0, the icon disappeared. Only then did our protagonist understand that someone has to accept the offer for it to become a quest. Then he tried to offer food immortality for himself, with the price auto-set at 1 million gems, but none of his homies had that kind of cash to give him. Unfortunately, he realized there was a penalty for failing 3 times before John Soo could do anything else. The truck came to a halt in CO. John pointed at the massive sinkholes on the road ahead. He immediately realized these holes weren't caused by monsters and wondered who could have made them. The squad decided to head toward the riverbank on foot, since the truck couldn't clear those sinkholes. When they reached the bridge, they noticed the river water had risen violently, leaving them no choice but to cross the bridge filled with abandoned cars and flickering fires. John Soo decided to cross before the bridge collapsed. When they got halfway across, all the neighboring bridges started to crumble. After a series of explosions, the group started running, and our hero tried to make another offer. But the price was too steep, and with the penalty in effect, no quest would be granted for the rest of the day. Suddenly, an explosion underneath caused their bridge to collapse too, snapping it in half and splitting the squad. John Soo fell into the river, and one of the homies in the audience used the voice chat feature to guide him. He couldn't see anything and wasn't a good swimmer either, but that homie kept giving directions. Unfortunately, our protagonist started drowning, but the friend insisted he was almost there. Luckily, the current pushed him ashore. At this point, that homie called for him to wake up, and after a few minutes, John Soo finally regained consciousness. He knew he hadn't made it across the river, and the homies explained that his friends had been swept away too. Then he noticed Ji Young's bag lying at the water's edge. He stood up and demanded the homies help with gems, but they refused. John Soo insisted they should help him, saying this was an emergency. One commenter said he'd lost his mind, then went silent. Thinking back, this was the first time he'd been solo since leaving Myeongseodong. Then a homie suggested making a raft. Suddenly, 3 soldiers appeared on their motorboat. While laying low, our hero eavesdropped on their conversation. They mentioned destroying all the bridges, saying it would stop people from crossing. Suddenly, one of them opened fire, but it turned out to be just a dog running past them. One guy reminded the others that something had left after making a huge mess. As they turned the boat, a massive vine skewered one of the soldiers. John Soo shuddered, thinking they had strayed far from the censor zone. He saw a monster that was a hybrid between a zombie and a brutal tree. Then he learned from the homies that it was a wood zombie, created when a brutal tree eats too many zombies. Meanwhile, the wood zombie devoured one soldier and used a vine to lash the second. Even while he was still hiding in the bushes, he still witnessed the second soldier getting sucked dry by the wood zombie. At this point, the third remaining soldier tried to restart the boat, and as the vine drew near, he was saved by John Soo with an axe swing to the vine. Our MC was forced to show himself because the zombie had spotted him. Then the wood zombie started charging toward him, but it slipped and drowned in the river. Afterward, John Soo grabbed a rifle left behind by the dead soldier, and with that gun, he threatens the soldier, ordering him to swim over here. Later, he changed his clothes and asked the soldier if he was heading from Daeryong Station to the bus terminal. However, the tied-up soldier says nothing, so our hero steps closer and asks about the 7.5 division. Meanwhile, the homies comment on the soldier's looks, comparing him to our MC. John Soo points out that the soldier has no dog tags, and because his eyes look shady. He pokes both of them while reloading the rifle. He asks again why they blew up the bridges. The soldier remains silent, so John Soo shoots him in the shoulder and leg. The soldier screams in agony, but he just wants him to answer the question. He demands to know why they destroyed the bridges. Finally, the soldier opens his mouth, saying they are from a 7.5 division. However, John Soo already knew that, so he pulls the trigger again, but the safety is on. The soldier trembles in fear and cusses. Now, John Soo wants to know if they blew up the bridges because they already got all the people they needed. The soldier stays silent, but out of nowhere, the MC tells him the end passcode that the mayor told him before. The soldier gets confused, then even more shocked when John Soo claims he's joining the 7.5 division. The soldier asks if he's one of the VIPs. John Soo confirms and keeps playing the part, saying he was promised a gig with top-secret high-level figures, but got jumped before he could get the deets. Surprisingly, the soldier actually buys it, and John Soo emphasizes that it's their fault for blowing the bridge. The soldier yells that doing that only makes things more complicated. But John Soo declares he's a warrior, a mercenary. He's used to the battlefield, and this is just how he vents when he's not treated right. He baits the soldier, saying if he answers everything, he'll take him along. He caps, saying he can patch him up since he's a field specialist. Finally, the soldier gives in and starts explaining. The 7.5 Division is a special task force for national crises. Their mission is to efficiently gather key personnel and restore order to the collapsed society. Hearing this, John-Soo makes a weird face. The soldier asks if he's okay, and he plays it off, saying it's just a bug. After that, he learns the 7.5 Division is in Taejun, but the soldier doesn't mention their numbers. The soldier refuses to say where they are headed next. Our hero wonders if their destination is Jeju Island, since he heard it's safe there. Then he finds out they're heading to Cheonju Airport. His jaw drops because he didn't see that coming. Then the soldier starts gasping, demanding medical treatment. He also demands to be untied, so they can at least make a raft across the river. Now John-Soo knows no boat is coming. He asks one more time if they blew the bridge because they have enough people. The soldier admits they don't need many civilians, since managing everyone would be too much of a hassle. Hearing that, our guy puts on a terrifying face. He walks up to the soldier and concludes that if the goal was to stop panic and chaos, it might make sense, but blowing the bridges is overkill. To him, this feels more like a coup than a rescue mission. The soldier screams that he's working to help the country, but his face says otherwise. Then John-Soo points the rifle at him, since he's heard all he needs to hear. Suddenly, he notices a zombie approaching. So our protagonist opens the door for the zombie and leaves the soldier behind. As he steps outside, he returns to the riverbank and pulls up the store window. The homie suggests he look for a life buoy. Turns out it costs 2 gems. Then the guy sees a shop notification that it updates randomly. The homies don't explain much about it, just hyped about the tube. Next, he makes a sad face since he still owes only 10 gems. Then a bunch of homies donate 1 gem each to him. Someone mentions that Maxed Out is spending big as a diehard fan. Then our hero observes the river and concludes the current is getting much stronger now. Meanwhile, Maxed Out donates another gem to him. Suddenly, the wood zombie spots John-Soo from the riverbank. The guy starts hauling it toward the buildings and ducks into one. Meanwhile, the wood zombie loses track of him. After a few minutes, John-Soo spots the zombie from the rooftop as it's turning away. He decides not to let it slide. Then he pulls a tuna can out of Ji-Young's bag. After eating, he tosses the empty can down and suddenly leaps off the rooftop. John-Soo jumps and lands on the roof of the next building. However, he trips and falls, but this doesn't make John-Soo quit. Then he jumps to the next building and faceplants again. Regardless, he gets back up and leaps to yet another building. But this third time, he doesn't fall. Now John-Soo stands near the sensor's location and tosses the empty tuna can at it. Turns out the wood zombie reacts to noise, and when it enters the sensor zone, the sensor attacks it immediately. Now our hero hopes they'll just scrap with each other. Afterward, John-Soo runs toward the exit of the building he's in. While escaping, he notices the wood zombie is actually gaining the upper hand in the fight. Seeing this, John-Soo runs as fast as he can to the river, but he hesitates before jumping in, regretting his trash swimming skills. Meanwhile, the wood zombie has gotten way too close, making him panic. He rushes to the water's edge, screaming at the homies to give him 11 gems. He tells them he wants to buy a tube, but the homies keep trolling, telling him to just buy a real donut and eat it. John-Soo panics and yells at them to drop the gems first and talk later. Finally, he jumps into the river, but quickly realizes the current is still savage. Luckily, the 6 homies issue him a co-op quest. If he makes it 2/3 across the river, he'll get 11 gems. John-Soo gives it his all, but unfortunately, the wood zombie jumps into the river after him. John-Soo feels a chill down his spine, but keeps trying to swim. Finally, he crosses 2/3 of the river and clears the quest. He buys the tube immediately, but as he tries to grab it, the sinking wood zombie grabs his leg from underwater. Somehow, he breaks free and successfully climbs onto the tube. Then John-Soo stops for a few seconds to catch his breath. He explains to the homies that he's trying to widen the gap by riding the current. Bad luck strikes as the wood zombie somehow figures out how to surf and starts chasing him. In a panic, the guy remembers the luge technique and lies flat on the tube to pick up speed. Finally, he reaches the area beneath the destroyed bridge, and the homies warn him to watch out because the bridge is still collapsing. The wood zombie continues to stay on his tail. Luckily, some remaining debris from the bridge hits the wood zombie square on. Our hero finally breathes a sigh of relief, but then he notices something nearby. Thank God, it's the dog from earlier. He tells the dog to pull him ashore. The dog approaches and gives him. John-Soo named it Black Fur Ball, but right after that, the dog swam ahead, leaving our protagonist in the dust. Deciding to keep swimming on his own, he realized the dog was actually leading him to a spot where the current was weaker. After a few minutes, John-Soo finally made it across. The dog gave a soft bark, clearly waiting for a reward. John-Soo handed it a tuna can. A little later, After changing clothes, our hero tried to get his bearings using a map posted at the bus stop. Suddenly, the dog started barking at something. When the protagonist looked in that direction, he was shocked to see a bus pulling up to the station. Jansu was baffled at the sight of the bus. Then the driver yelled at him to get on immediately. Next, the guy noticed a pack of wolves closing in. With no other choice, he hopped on the bus, and the dog jumped in after him. The driver floored it instantly. Turns out those were gray wolves, famous for being a total pain in the ass. The protagonist opened the back window to deal with them, and the dog followed suit. He pulled out a tuna can and hurled it at one of the wolves. As a result, 2 wolves fell behind, but the rest of the pack kept chasing. Then he spotted one of them was the alpha, so Jansu threw the lascan at its legs. The alpha tripped, causing the whole pack to stop with it. Jansu breathed a sigh of relief, hoping that was the end of it. Then the driver introduced himself as Park Chong-sik, driver of Express Bus Number 2. This left Jansu stunned. He asked why the man picked him up, a total stranger, and mentioned he came from across the river. Jansu was surprised the man knew the bridge had collapsed, but he explained that he had swam across. The driver said he came from a depot, but the guy wanted to know where he had stopped first. Chong-sik explained he came here after meeting some soldiers at Daryong Terminal. Those soldiers were protecting people and prepping to leave, so they were loading passengers onto buses. Chong-sik added that he wanted to pick up at least one last person before the soldiers moved out. Having lived here his whole life, driving the bus between Taejun Station and the terminal every day, helping people was his mission. He couldn't just sit still as long as people's destinations were still on his route. The homie started commenting on Chong-sik's selflessness, saying it's something our hero would never have. According to Chong-sik, he would stop at all the locations mentioned by the people at the terminal. He praised Jansu for shaking off the monsters and said it would take about 15 minutes to arrive. But the guy refused to sleep during that time. He didn't fully trust the driver yet. So he spent the time chatting with the homies. He wanted to know more about that hardcore fan. The existence of hardcore fans meant there was much more to this system. The homies didn't expect him to realize that, and one even blamed Maxed Out. Next, the protagonist acted super affectionate toward Maxed Out. Seeing that, the homies teased him for playing favorites, but he reassured them, saying he was just encouraging Maxed Out. He pointed out that if there are hardcore fans, there must be other similar features. He added there's one thing every streamer needs, a mod. All the homies were shook because he wasn't supposed to know about that yet. While Jansu was still playing dumb, he smirked, guessing they were afraid he'd become too OP. The homies admitted he had read them perfectly and even said they were a bit scared of him. Our hero just shrugged it off, promising he'd never do anything to his homies. Just as he asked how the mod system worked, the bus suddenly took a sharp turn, sending him tumbling. Suddenly, Mr. Chong-sik screamed that the wolves were on the left. Out of nowhere, a wolf slammed into the window. Looking outside, Jansu saw 3 wolves chasing them. He felt a chill realizing that earlier. They only stopped chasing because the alpha had tripped. Suddenly, a wolf howls to call for more backup. Our guy rushes to Mr. Chong-sik and tells him they need to get out of here, insisting they can't save anyone if they end up dead now. Then another wolf howls for reinforcements. John Su notices a wolf charging straight at them. So Mr. Chong-sik decides to pull a U-turn. As the bus swings around, it slams hard into that wolf. The driver floors it, surging forward. But now there are 6 wolves chasing the bus. They keep throwing themselves against the glass. And our guy is at a loss for what to do. Suddenly, something hits the wheel hard, messing with the bus's handling. Then the homies suggest the hero should toss Black Fur Ball out as bait to lure the wolves away. He hesitates, but then notices his aggro skill hasn't triggered, meaning the wolves are only targeting the bus. Our protagonist quickly cooks up a plan and yells at the driver to open the back door. Mr. Chong-sik is confused, so John Su opens the back door himself and tells the driver to shut it. The moment a wolf gets inside. As soon as the door opens, a wolf leaps in, and his aggro skill finally triggers. Mr. Chong-sik slams the door shut immediately, and then our guy grabs his axe, hacking at the wolf. As the bus turns, the wolf loses its balance and falls. Jansu attacks from multiple angles, until the wolf is completely taken down. On his signal, Mr. Chong-sik opens the door again, but this time, 2 wolves lunge inside. Dealing with 2 is way harder, but somehow, he manages to toss one to the side, as the other one lunges at him. Luckily, the bus takes a sharp turn, sending the wolf and Jansu tumbling in opposite directions. After regaining its balance, the wolf charges at Jansu. Before he can strike, the wolf gets dangerously close. He tries to kick it off, and then Furball jumps in and bites the wolf's leg. With Furball's help, our guy finishes off the wolf. Mr. Chong-sik asks if he's okay, but our hero acts tough, saying he's been training his whole life for this. Then he glances at Furball, deciding to go on foot for a bit. He steps off the bus, while the driver keeps going straight. 6 wolves spot Jansu, and as he heads toward them, ready to wipe out the whole pack, having regret chips in 3 gems. But the homies are confused why he's trying to solo all of them at once. However, our guy already has a plan. According to the plan, once he gets off, Mr. Chong-sik will honk the horn after 5 seconds. When the horn blares, all the wolves shift their attention to the bus. This creates the perfect opening for Jansu to pick them off easily. Afterward, he heads back to the bus, noting that Furball is actually pretty cracked. Then he asks the homies to clarify if this pup is an item or something else. They explain it's just a smart dog, though one adds that some animals are on par with rare items. He reaches the bus and notices the rear tire is completely shredded. He suggests to the driver that they should walk the rest of the way, and adds that they need to hustle since the alpha is still out there. Jansu also promises to stick by Mr. Chong-sik until they meet up with the soldiers at the Taejun bus terminal. Civilians are screaming at the soldiers to let them in, but the troops aren't having it. The crowd gossips about how much longer they'll have to wait, clearly frustrated as hell. Turns out another squad asks for more time, but no one in the group thinks any more people are coming. Since they've cleared the mission and gathered enough essential personnel, some wonder what'll happen when those useless refugees realize what's coming for them. But as long as these human shields do their job until the group reaches Cheonju Airport, the soldiers couldn't care less. Suddenly, Mr. Chong-sik screams for help with the wolves hot on his heels. The civilians panic, while the soldiers quickly open fire to take down the beasts. Their captain soon signals to cease fire. Mr. Chong-sik thanks them for saving his life and says he's alone. However, the captain senses something's fishy, puzzled how an old man like Mr. Chong-sik could dodge a pack of fast monsters like that all by himself. Another soldier figures Mr. Chong-sik is a bus driver, so he probably hid somewhere before making a break for it. The captain sees a higher-ranking officer and salutes, but the senior officer chews him out for saluting in public, warning that move could turn him into a target by exposing his rank. The officer orders him to start prepping since they're heading to Cheonju Airport. The soldiers mention the squad at Taejun Station offer to collab, but they refused, determined to hog all the credit to get noticed by the division commander. The high-ranking officer pats the captain on the shoulder, expressing hope he won't let them down. Meanwhile, at the parking lot, our guy notices the gunfire has stopped. He silently thanks Mr. Chong-sik for the intel, thinking he can score a ride here and tail the soldiers. Suddenly, he ducks when he sees a key keeper collecting keys. Jansu remembers this is the guy Mr. Chong-sik mentioned earlier, the one holding his friend's bus keys. Then our protagonist greets the man and says he's a newcomer. He suggests the key keeper head over there if he's looking for the soldiers, but then Jansu asks if he's collecting keys. The key keeper tells him to beat it, saying he's busy. Jansu learns the man is waiting for a friend, so he asks if it's the one who left the bus keys with him. The key keeper wants to know how Jansu knows this, and he explains he met the driver of express bus number 2. The man presses to know if the old driver is still alive, and our hero confirms it. He adds that the old man won't be joining the soldiers, because he has some business to take care of. The key keeper realizes our protagonist needs a car, but Jansu insists he just wants to borrow one temporarily and suggests they go together. The key keeper wants to stay and watch the car since people might come back for them, and he believes his friend will return for the keys. Finally, he hands Jansu a car key. A bit later, when Jansu finds the vehicle, he grimaces because the car he found can barely even be called a car. Inside, he sees it has GPS. Suddenly, his mood completely flips when the system announces the shop has updated. There, he finds a new item, Fury Speed Cover, which allows the car to hit 300 kilometers per hour for 7 minutes. However, if the car slows down after hitting top speed, its lifespan drops to 60 minutes. Our guy is surprised, but also suspicious since the item only costs 2 gems, one of the homies says items update based on the situation, while a few others troll him. But he buys it anyway and installs it underneath. He starts the car and notices that due to the pedal mod, the car now has a set expiration time. Next, the key keeper lets him know the soldiers have left the bus terminal. Jansu asks him to tell anyone looking for him that he headed to Jeju Island. As Jansu moves forward, he decides to keep his distance from the soldiers. Meanwhile, the soldiers are herding the civilians onto buses. The people inside are trustful, believing they won't be abandoned. However, they soon realize the buses are moving out ahead of the soldiers after all. The driver reassures everyone that the soldiers slowing down is for a good reason, and everyone inside begins to wail. Right after that, a soldier screams, pointing at a monster up ahead. A massive beast appears in front of them, sending the civilians into a frenzy while the soldiers immediately open fire, even though their attacks do a bit of damage. More monsters soon emerge, Civilians scream at the driver to stop the bus, but he only floors it and abruptly switches lanes, diverting all the monsters toward their bus. Minutes later, the beast completely obliterates the bus, causing a massive explosion. Meanwhile, John-Soo is in his car when he hears the blast. He notices the soldiers have spotted him too, but they don't seem to care. Then he hears the screams of the people on the bus. Suddenly, one of the homies starts trolling our hero with insults and mocking his looks. Even though he ignores it at first, the guy starts using straight-up profanity. The other homies step in, telling the troll to beat it. This situation makes John-Soo lose his cool. He asks the homies how to pick someone as a mod. He learns he needs a hardcore fan first, as both the player and a hardcore fan need to nominate and agree on a mod. Our protagonist sighs, realizing he's helpless as a solo streamer. Then he calls out to Maxed Out, asking if they can become his hardcore fan. Unfortunately, he discovers that to become a hardcore fan, that person has to give him 30 of their assets. There are other ways, but this is the most practical choice. The trolling continues. But suddenly, Maxed Out donates 40 gems, becoming our guy's hardcore fan. He starts sobbing with gratitude and promises to grant his new hardcore fan one wish. Now Maxed Out's comments have a special effect and show their username prominently. Now John-Soo is hyped to pick a mod. Maxed Out suggests someone, and after accepting, our hero lets Maxed Out nominate. They nominate Green Lunatic, saying Green Lunatic is super reliable when given a task. John-Soo hits the accept button, and since everyone is down with it, Green Lunatic becomes the streamer's mod. When the troll tries to keep going, Green Lunatic immediately kicks him, shooting down harassment. This catches our guy off guard. Then he thanks the mod and hopes they keep up the good work. With the support from the homies, he feels recharged and decides to get back to the mission. The soldiers take notice of his car, but the captain decides to ignore it, thinking they're just tailing and are probably civilians. He plans to deal with them after reaching the airport. Regarding bus number 2, the soldiers are notified that a monster leaped on a bus number 1, causing it to veer off course. They think it won't be an issue, as long as they keep going with bus number 2 and 3 according to plan. Suddenly, the bus next to them plunges off a cliff because of a weird monster, causing everyone to scream bloody murder from behind. Our protagonist wonders what's going on and suspects there's another reflector, but concludes that something else has ambushed them. Suddenly, Maxed Out mentions it's a grasper and suggests going faster. John-Soo hesitates, but the homies explain that graspers can latch onto the undercarriage and will explode if the speed drops below a certain level. Our hero doesn't know exactly how fast he needs to go, but one homie suggests driving at 300 kilometers per hour. However, with a car like this, hitting that speed seems impossible until John-Soo remembers he has the pedal mod. With that realization, he starts gunning it. Meanwhile, the soldiers are still busy dealing with the graspers when they notice our guy charging toward them at an unthinkable speed. As his car closes in on the traffic, the homies get anxious and suggest he stop, but he gunned it instead. Confident he could push through, John-Soo maneuvers the car, weaving through the traffic, while the monsters fail to keep up with him. His car blazes past a soldier's vehicle, which gets wrecked right then, pulling ahead of the convoy. He doesn't slow down since they're still deep in the woods. He notices the soldiers let those buses go first as bait, but it doesn't seem like they plan to ditch everyone, meaning the real danger must be up ahead. Realizing that, John-Soo eases off the gas a bit while the system notifies him the car only has 60 minutes left. He decides to pull over for a second, not wanting to get too far ahead of the military convoy if the soldiers manage to reach this point, meaning they successfully cleared the graspers. A moment later, the military convoy appears. They've managed to save 6 buses. Meanwhile, at the riverbank, Min-chun drags himself out of the water. He wonders if his friends are still alive, but feels relieved to have made it across the river. Suddenly, he spots Ji-young sitting on a rock. Bursting with joy, he rushes toward her and asks if everyone is okay. When she gives a vague answer, Min-chun yells, demanding to know what's going on, reminding her they have no time to waste. However, Ji-young looks hopeless and says there's no point anymore. Surprisingly, Sejin appears in a tracksuit, looking totally relieved to see Min-chun alive. She explains they've been searching for him this whole time. Min-chun immediately asks about our hero, and Sejin says John-Soo isn't dead, though he might have left the city already. According to her, Ji-young saw him get on a bus while escaping the monsters. Min-chun feels lost without John-Soo, so he tries to guess where John-Soo might have gone. He recalls the radio broadcast they all heard at the restaurant when our protagonist decided to go to the terminal. Therefore, Min-chun decides they should head to the terminal. He's convinced John-Soo went there as planned. Sejin suggests they should make a more thorough plan since they don't know how to handle the soldiers at the terminal. Despite that, Min-chun is adamant. Having come this far, he doesn't want to change plans just because our guy isn't with them. He's sure they'll reunite with John-Soo soon, and finally, Sejin agrees. Then she suggests Min-chun change out of his wet clothes at a nearby shop, and advises Ji-young to do the same. Ji-young stands up, deciding to tag along. Meanwhile, near the airport, the high-ranking officer is screaming at the soldiers, ordering them to quickly clear the abandoned cars off the road. Behind them, John-Soo's car is idling, and he can't shake off a bad vibe. A homie suggests walking to the airport, but our guy knows. The soldiers are still suspicious of him. Just as the soldiers finish clearing the path, John-Soo hears a massive explosion. Suddenly, a giant hand erupts from the pavement ahead, and a massive monster emerges. It looks like an evolved big head, now a big body. John-Soo panics, quickly driving as more monsters crawl up from below. Then he wonders if the soldiers brought all these buses just to feed the monsters while the planes prep for takeoff. John-Soo finds himself pinned between two big bodies. Looking ahead, he sees the soldiers have abandoned a bus, leaving the passengers to fend for themselves. In the chaos, a big body grabs someone trying to run and devours them. Witnessing that horrific scene, our hero starts to shake. The memory of the delivery guy at his parents' place, who met a similar fate, flashes through his mind. Suddenly, Maxed Out helps him regain his cool and focus. Determined to catch up with the soldiers, he moves forward but soon spots another abandoned bus up ahead. The passengers are desperately crying for help, even though the sight weighs heavy on his heart. John-Soo still drives past and escapes the immediate danger. Now his car only has 10 minutes of juice left, and he still hasn't closed the gap with the soldiers. He opens the shop window hoping for a new update, but finds nothing. John-Soo isn't sure what's waiting ahead, but suspects the soldiers knew about these monsters, except for the graspers. This leads him to believe someone at the airport is feeding them intel, maybe via radio. If it involves long-distance communication, it probably comes from other soldiers stationed at the airport, since the soldiers took the most direct route. Our guy decides to take a different path. After a few minutes, he arrives at the airport with Black Furball. He's surprised to see no one inside. Suddenly, a soldier spots him and asks if he's the one who sent the rescue request. John-Soo notices this soldier is Air Force, not from a 7.5 division. The officer urges him to hurry because the monsters are close. At the same time, a subordinate reports to Major Jean that they are ready for takeoff. Major Jean grabs our guy's arm, announcing to the subordinate that he's a survivor. The Air Force soldiers lead John-Soo onto the plane, assuring they'll explain everything later since time is tight. He's also allowed to bring Furball along. Before boarding, John-Soo warns the soldier about the 7.5 division, explaining they're using civilians as human shields deep down. He knows the Air Force and the 7.5 division have different agendas. Then he hurries onto the plane. As he enters, he notices other survivors already seated. He guesses the 7.5 division must have convinced the Air Force that they were also trying to save people. As the plane prepares for takeoff, passengers see monsters through the windows. The homies in the chat reassure everyone that monsters can't touch our hero right now, since this moment feels like a game cutscene. The plane takes off, but John-Soo remains vigilant, knowing he can't rely on luck or trust until the game is over. Suddenly, he realizes they are flying in the opposite direction of Jeju Island. John-Soo stands up and walks forward. A soldier tries to stop him, but he insists he has something to ask. He goes to the galley area and asks the flight attendant where the plane is going. She politely asks him to return to his seat first, but when he presses her, she eventually reveals the destination is Jeju Island. John-Soo doesn't buy it and heads straight for the cockpit, demanding the pilot tell him where the plane is actually going. The soldiers immediately spot him, determined to force him back to his seat. The other passengers start to panic, but our protagonist has already broken through. Now he demands the soldiers explain why the pilot turn around if the plane is truly flying to Jeju Island. Suddenly, the plane shakes violently. Everyone screams as something slams into the fuselage. The pilot announces to the passengers that they are under attack by unidentified monsters. Our hero looks out the window and sees a giant creature resembling a fly attacking the plane. It's a mayfly. As the monster collides with the plane, it loses balance and plummets. The sight leaves John-Soo terrified, but maxed out. Maxed Out reminds you that they'll donate gems if you survive this situation. He knows his hardcore fan is almost tapped out on gems, meaning the other homies are gatekeeping their stash for the truly desperate moments. Then Green Lunatic reminds our guy that sometimes just staying alive is the quest, and suggests a challenge to survive the plane crash. In a panic, John-Soo asks a nearby soldier if there are parachutes on board, but only gets told that this is a passenger plane, so there aren't any. John-Soo gets even more anxious, but then he notices a sudden silence. The monsters died trying to ram the plane. he finally feels a bit of relief. He goes back to the flight attendant, asking her once more to check with the pilot about their destination. After making a call, the attendant returns and says the pilot can't answer directly, but he received a message from another aircraft. There are too many monsters in the south, so they'll be landing at a nearby airport. She doesn't know anything beyond that. When John-Soo tries to talk to the pilot himself, the flight attendant stops him, saying that she wasn't even supposed to reveal what she just said. She explains that disclosing the destination could cause unnecessary panic and reassures him they'll land safely. Our guy turns to her and asks for some water. After taking the cup, he heads back to his seat. He reminds the homies about the previous mission, and they ask if he wants them to set a new one. Taking a sip of water, John-Soo reflects that the pilot gave up on heading south, implying the new destination was chosen based on very limited intel. The mod tells the homies to set a quest immediately, and when one guy complains, Green Lunatic straight up nukes his chat. John-Soo gets mad, wondering why someone got banned, but soon learns the mod only gave a timeout and the guy is still there. Recalling that the guy was the one bullying him earlier, he wonders why he hasn't been kicked out yet. Suddenly, our hero hears a loud noise. Turns out Hellwater just got eliminated, and that sound was the ban effect. John-Soo tells the mod to be careful and act more professionally in the future. Next, the mod calls for a quest, and along with 4 other homies, they set a group goal: survive the plane crash for a reward of 15 gems. At first, John-Soo complains they could have set the price higher, but then realizes demanding too many gems right away might backfire. Suddenly, Furball looks up at him with an innocent face, and our protagonist glances outside. As the plane flies past the checkpoint, he quickly opens the info panel and discovers the plane is heading to Pohang Airport because the southern routes have been blocked by monsters. John-Soo is stunned by this new destination. A viewer points out that the destination was fixed beforehand, but John-Soo isn't sure if the attendant played him or if the pilot changed course. Then he wonders if Pohang Airport is near any seaports, but the homies are just trolling, though he believes the system is hinting he should travel by sea. Right then, another mayfly slams into the plane. Our guy reflects on how he's been heading west until now, but since the plane isn't going to Gunsan Airport, that direction must be crawling with monsters. Suddenly, he stands up, deciding to look for something. Meanwhile, back at the Taejun terminal, Min-chun finds the keykeeper and asks if he works there. The keykeeper nods, so Min-chun asks if he's seen John-Soo. The man explains he was told to pass a message to anyone looking for our protagonist. Hearing this, Min-chun panics and shakes the man, desperate for more info. Suddenly, Sejun runs up and slams the keykeeper to the floor, while Ji-young stands behind, pointing a knife at him. Min-chun quickly yells that it's just a misunderstanding, insisting he was only asking about our guy. A moment later, all 3 apologize, and the keykeeper is understanding about it. The world just isn't what it used to be anymore. He passed on the message. John-Soo headed for Jeju Island. After asking if he mentioned how he planned to get there, the keykeeper shook his head. She started to panic, but Min-chun wanted to know if our hero followed a group of soldiers. The keykeeper replied that John-Soo drove off chasing them when the troops headed for Cheongju Airport. But he warned them not to take that route since he'd been gone a long time, suggesting they go elsewhere to survive. Min-chun weighed his options and decided they'd head to Taejun Station. Meanwhile, on the plane, our protagonist looked over the map he got from Soldier, but still couldn't guess where they would crash if things went south. The homies in the chat kept up their trolling when a viewer donated a measly single gem. John-Soo complained that they never donate when he's actually doing great. With a total of 43 gems, he started searching for something in the overhead bins. When the flight attendant spotted him, he promised to stop as soon as he found what he needed. After rummaging through every nook and cranny, he gave up and turned back. But luckily, he saw a teddy bear that led him to a chest. Nearby, in there, he found a wingsuit instead of parachute. He panicked for a sec, wondering if it had any special features, while the homies were dying of laughter. Calming down, the guy remembered both the flashlight and the axe had hidden abilities, so surely this suit must have one too. As he put on the suit, a kid behind him asked what he was doing. John-Soo jumped and tumbled onto the floor. The kid didn't mean to scare him and reached out to help, but our hero got up himself, in a dramatic way, insisting he didn't need any help. The kid excitedly compared John-Soo to those inchworms from a documentary. John-Soo told the kid to get back to his seat, but the boy asked if he was planning to fly down, and kept pestering to go along. Our hero explained the wingsuit was only for one person and suggested the kid sit next to him if he was bored. After the kid settled down next to him, John-Soo asked about his family. Sadly, he learned the boy's parents were killed by monsters and the Air Force had rescued him. Now John-Soo wanted to know if the kid had eavesdropped on anything from the soldiers. After thinking for a bit, The kid recalled hearing a soldier call someone commander over the phone. Our guy noticed the Air Force seemed to still have a solid command structure despite being short-staffed. He recalled Major Jin's behavior and concluded their plan wasn't to collab with the 7.5 Division. So it was very likely the mentioned commander didn't belong to the 7.5 Division. When he went to pat the kid's head to thank him for the intel, the boy dodged, claiming he wasn't child. John Soo got a bit annoyed and pointed out the kid wasn't even as tall as the seat. The kid shot back, saying he didn't want his hair touched because he just styled it with gel. The homies reminded the hero the kid was an orphan, so John Soo stopped arguing. But he couldn't help wondering how the kid even got hair gel in this chaos. He sat down next to him and advised the boy to sleep a bit, assuring him it would help. Furball curled up under the seat. The homies wondered if John Soo planned to take the dog, but John Soo decided it was better to leave Furball behind. Just as he drifted off for a bit, the kid screamed, calling for him as the plane started shaking. John Soo told the boy to buckle up and instructed him to stay low. Panic erupted as passengers realized the plane was going down. Suddenly, a mayfly tore a huge hole in the fuselage and fell out. Unexpectedly, Furball lunged through that hole, and our guy had no idea where the dog went. The homies urged him to jump mid-chaos. Quickly, he grabs an oxygen mask for the kid while the pilot announces they are attempting an emergency landing in a reservoir. John Soo tells the kid to wrap a wet cloth around his face to avoid inhaling smoke and instructs him to stay low while moving. As the plane loses altitude, John Soo decides it's time to jump. He tells the kid to survive no matter what. The memory of watching a sports documentary on paragliding, thinking he could easily pull it off, flashes through his mind. But now, in free fall, he screams in terror, realizing he doesn't have a clue what he's doing. He's plummeting at terminal velocity, begging the homies for help. Maxed Out suggests he pull his wrist back, and our guy follows that advice. Luckily, his speed drops by half as he starts to glide. His hardcore fan apologizes for not helping sooner, explaining they can't spoil everything in advance. Then John Soo tells himself he seriously needs more fans. John Soo decides to latch onto one of the falling mayflies. He slowly approaches and manages to grab one despite the wind pressure. The homies start donating some gems to him, and he notices he currently has a total of 39 gems. Turns out the monster he's clinging to passed out after slamming into the plane. Looking back at the aircraft, he sees the kid almost jumping out too. John Soo screams at him not to do it, but he jumps anyway. Now the kid is falling faster than our hero. And Green Lunatic suddenly sets a quest to rescue the kid for a 19-gem reward, so our guy dives down. Confident he can save the kid now that he knows how to use the wingsuit. He screams at the kid to spread his arms, but the boy doesn't respond, so John Soo decides to accelerate as he gets closer. The kid is nearly unconscious and still isn't reacting much. John Soo manages to get the kid on his back and tries to wake him up. As soon as he gets a faint reaction, our hero tells him to grab onto a mayfly, promising he'll be right there to catch him if he slips. Despite the kid's protests, John Soo lets go of him anyway and immediately grabs a nearby mayfly himself. The kid tries to catch one but fails. Fortunately, John Soo was ready, and as he reaches out his hand, the kid falls straight into his arms. Now both of them are clinging to a single mayfly. Mission accomplished, and with that, John Soo has a total of 73 gems. Meanwhile, the kid won't stop crying, and John Soo frustratingly screams to know why he jumped. The boy just says he was worried about the incoming monsters, but our hero says to save that talk for later. Now he focuses on landing and decides they must jump before they hit the ground. After a few minutes, they jump onto a nearby tree, and luckily, they survive. The kid feels nauseous while our guy is busy unzipping the wingsuit. Meanwhile, more mayfly carcasses come crashing to the ground all around them. They look up and see their plane falling out of the sky. After confirming the kid is okay, John Soo gets worried about Black Furball. The homies suggest he look for the dog's body, but to everyone's surprise, Black Furball comes running out of the woods toward the protagonist. The dog barks with total relief. Both he and the kid are amazed to see it alive. As John Soo leans down, Black Furball licks his face. Suddenly, our hero notices something in the dog's mouth and guesses Black Furball must have snatched a mayfly to land safely. As they start moving, he learns the kid's name is June Park. Then John Soo tells June they need to move fast, warning him that otherwise he'll be left behind. Both of them realize the mayflies don't care about people on the ground. Suddenly, a military plane flies overhead, firing flares to take down the monsters. From that, our guy figures out the mayflies react to bright lights. The group moves forward. John Soo believes there's a high chance that military plane will land safely. Later, he reaches the entrance of Pohang Airport. Before John Soo can enter, he hears a massive collapse. Turns out the inside of the airport is caving in. He feels relieved and tells June and Black Furball to stay back. Suddenly, a crowd of people rushes out while soldiers guide them. Luckily, those soldiers are from the Air Force. One of them is Major Jean, and after seeing our hero alive, he believes the plane landed safely. However, our guy insists on getting those people out because the building is collapsing. So Major Jean orders a soldier to assist everyone and get them out safely. Unfortunately, they discover the necessary keys are stuck under the rubble. Those keys were left for them by other soldiers, but the Major changes the subject, asking about the others with John Soo, as he heard the plane crashed. John Soo explains he hitched a ride on one of those flying monsters and survived. Major Jean is stunned for a moment, then asks if anyone else survived. Our hero mentions a kid and a dog. Meanwhile, June and Black Furball are hiding in the bushes. Next, John Soo wonders if more soldiers came from Chonju Airport. He learns from the Major that there were supposed to be more, but he doesn't know what happened to them. He had been extra cautious after hearing the message our guy left. They put those 7.5 Division soldiers on a different plane, but they haven't shown up here. This makes Major Jean uneasy. He believes it's his fault for not finding another way. But the protagonist reminds him to set that aside and find the keys. Turns out the only way to get the keys is through a narrow crawl space. So the Major orders a small-framed soldier to go inside. However, that soldier can't squeeze through. After thinking for a bit, our hero puts June forward as the candidate to find the keys under the debris. He asks Major Jean to point out the exact location of the keys. Then John Soo asks June if he's really up for it. And June nods, determined to do his best. Afterward, the Major gives June further instructions. Once he understands, June enters the narrow gap under the rubble. Meanwhile, Black Furball barks and follows June into the crawlspace. John Soo feels uneasy and yells at June to be careful. June waves back and continues on. A moment later, the kid screams at the top of his lungs. John Soo starts to panic while the Major checks the passage. Concluding that something happened, our hero is helpless, only able to pray for June's safety. Unfortunately, they hear a zombie's voice from behind the rubble right after that. He sees June running away from the zombie and screams at him to get out. But luckily, the dog bites the zombie while trying to save June. After a few moments, June finally crawls out, handing the key box to John Soo. Before the boy can get completely clear, June is pulled back by the zombie, his face turning pale as our protagonist screams at him to get out fast. June finally escapes and gasps for air. He checks the boy's body for any bites or scratches. Luckily, June is uninjured. Next, he notices Black Furball running toward him. But instead of hugging it, John Soo inspects Black Furball's body and finds nothing unusual. The homies mock him for being cold-hearted, but John Soo reveals that he just didn't want to deal with a zombie dog. Major Jean praises little June, and the kid is thrilled that he could lend a hand. Afterward, John Soo advises everyone to move before the building completely collapses. They head to the parking lot, where Major Jean points out the vehicle to the protagonist that they'll be taking, and he also agrees to let Black Furball tag along. John Soo looks back to call June. The boy is meeting a group of soldiers. June soon runs back and explains he was talking to the people who helped him before, so our guy suggests June should go with them, since those people seem to be the boy's friends. However, the homies tease John Soo for being jealous, but our hero clarifies that June already has a group, so going with them makes sense. As June leaves, John Soo waves goodbye. After parting ways, our hero gets into the Major's car. As Major Jean takes the front seat, the airport building begins to collapse further. All vehicles in the area pull out immediately, and John Soo turns pale, realizing they would have been toast if they were even a second late. Just as they hit the main road, something underground tries to breach the surface and the road cracks open. The vehicles struggle to push through, while the Major orders the soldiers not to stop until they reach the port. Next, the guy learns they're heading to Yonggak Port, and there's likely a large ship waiting for them there. The soldiers who went ahead must have prepped everything since they promised a vehicle and actually delivered. Their conversation shifts to the nearby seaport. This port is mainly known for large ships carrying steel products, so even if there are ships, it might be hard to find a suitable getaway ride. Turns out a friend of the Major works at the port, and the Major has visited a few times. This news only makes John Soo more anxious. So he asks the homies if there's any way to deal with the creatures crawling up from the ground. The homies advise him to do nothing, because those giant monsters only live for a few hours anyway. As our car keeps moving, it suddenly hits something, while the other military vehicles speed ahead without stopping. Suddenly, another monster breaks through the ground, cracking the road as it tries to surface. The driver struggles to swerve, making the car shake violently. After escaping the danger, the cars ahead are nowhere to be seen. But the driver explains he took a different route because the monster destroyed the old road. Now, they are heading toward the port the Major mentioned. But despite being familiar with the place, he admits he's not an expert on it. Unexpectedly, their car starts making weird noises, indicating it was damaged in the previous collision. The driver isn't sure how much longer the car will last, so the Major orders him to drive as fast as he possibly can. Meanwhile, our male lead looks back and sees a big guy. Noting they managed to give it the slip, he grinds his teeth, wondering why things can't be chill for just once. A while later, they finally clear the danger zone. Then the protagonist turns to the Major, wanting to know about the commander he spoke to over the radio. Turns out the one contacting that commander wasn't Major Jean, but their battalion commander, when John-Soo presses for details. The Major explains that the battalion commander said it's hard to operate with the remaining forces, so he requested all military branches to cooperate. When the guy asks how many troops are left, the Major admits the losses are devastating. He reveals that the commander belongs to the Capital Defense Command, and assuming they're still operating on the ground. Hearing that, John-Soo was stunned, realizing the forces in Seoul hadn't been completely wiped out yet. Thinking back, the high-speed trains and station dorms weren't just decoys. The homies were surprised he finally connected the dots. Next, the protagonist sincerely thanked the Major for sharing this intel. The Major just shrugged, saying since they were collabing, it wasn't that big of a deal. A while later, they finally reached Pohang Port and spotted a cruise ship. Seeing that ship, the Major immediately felt something was off. They stepped out of the car with the cruise ship right before their eyes. John-Soo had always wished to board a cruise ship once in his life, but he quickly recalled what cruise ships are usually like in survival horror games. The Major pointed at the ship's position, noting it was anchored quite far from the pier. They wondered if anyone was already on board. Suddenly, Black Furball barked as someone waved at them from the ship. But that person suddenly froze up, and the group began to feel something was eerie out of nowhere. The ground started shaking just like before, and the Major ran off to find his friend. The soldier next to John-Soo turned pale and started panicking. The male lead glared at him, noticing the guy was totally losing it. Lost in thought, John-Soo weighed his options. One was to hide, two was to try and board the ship. Even though the big guys don't live long, he'd still need to hide for a few hours for them to die, and even surviving that didn't guarantee safety later if they tried to board. There's a high chance the ship would ditch them since it looked like it was running. He also considered trying to reach Yonggak Port, but there was no guarantee a ship would be waiting there. Before he could think further, the Major called him from behind. He had brought over a cargo crane. That's because his friend had been waiting here the whole time, and the soldiers stationed here reported they were coming. The lead was stunned this friend had waited so long, and even prepped the crane for them. This meant the ship had been anchored for a while, but fear kept it from approaching the pier. Major Jean yelled that his friend would adjust the crane so they could get on the ship soon. Suddenly, John-Soo heard gunfire and knew it was from the 7.5 Division. He turned to the Major to ask for a weapon, but the Major had tossed his gun after it jammed. The guy insisted. They needed to hurry and climbed into the crane. The Major pushed his friend aside, taking the controls himself, insisting that his friend go with them and promised to join later. The friend hesitated, but the protagonist grabbed him, explaining that if he didn't go, Major Jin's sacrifice would be for nothing. Right then, a vehicle pulled up behind them, and the 7.5 Division soldiers stepped out, screaming for them to stop the crane. Unexpectedly, a car rammed straight into one of the soldiers from behind. It was Chong-Sik. He snatched a rifle from an unconscious soldier and started blasting the remaining 7.5 Division troops, cursing them for letting too many people die. Just to save their own skins, the high-ranking officer of the 7.5 Division dodged the bullets and lunged toward Major Jean to beg for help, but Major Jean slung the crane door open hard, injuring the officer and sending him hitting the ground. The lead waved and called for Chong-Sik to come with them. Chong-Sik was shocked to see a way out, but he still wanted to finish off the high-ranking officer first. Unluckily, the rifle jammed as the protagonist yelled for him to hurry up. Chong-Sik finally gave up and ran over. As they neared the ship, the guy noticed it had just started moving. Before the situation got worse, John-Soo bought a rope from the system shop. Chong-Sik is stunned to see the rope appear out of thin air, but the male lead simply tells him to pass it down. John-Soo ties the rope to the rifle, while the crane stops because it has reached its full extension. Then the lead swings the rope, prepping to leap toward the ship. He jumps and tosses the rifle at the same time, aiming to hook it onto something. Luckily, the rifle catches onto the ship's railing. Using the rope, he hauls himself up, trying his best to at least reach the ledge. Once he makes it up there, the system announces he has gained a new skill and his skill info has been updated. Suddenly, the rifle slips, sending the protagonist falling. but he manages to grab onto a chain and saves himself from falling into the water. A few homies donate gems for his performance. Standing on a lifeboat, he summons his info panel. The system warns about monsters lurking near the ship and also reveals there are dangerous creatures in the sea threatening small boats. Realizing he'll need help for the road ahead, the guy decides to rescue the others left behind. When the homies ask how, he explains that cruise ships have free-fall lifeboats that he can lower himself. And later, the lead successfully saves everyone except for Major Jean. He asks for the name of the Major's friend and learns it's Dong Jin Sha, while the soldier beside him is Young Hun Ju. Jiansu recalls that Major Jean couldn't escape because a big body appeared right there, but he believes the Major must have been happy to have saved their lives. Mr. Cha agrees with him. Then the guy reminds everyone not to get complacent because they still know nothing about this ship. He checks his skill window. Skill slot 1 now contains aggro, record, and recovery, while skill slot 2 shows the skill he earned from completing the new master quest. Suddenly, the mod bans certain words that the previously banned user had used. Next, the lead decides it's time to head to the bridge to gather more info about the ship. They step into a luxurious lounge, and Jiansu spins around, soaking in the slightly more chill vibe. He draws his axe, ready to handle anything that gets close. As they move forward, Cha points out that he saw someone who looked like a kid. The lead presses him to confirm if it was a child or just something that looked like one, and reminds everyone to stay alert because Major Jean sacrificed himself for them. Mr. Cha pauses, making Jiansu think he might be another selfless martyr. He tells Cha to do whatever he wants, but he won't be responsible for him. Cha beams, mentioning how important helping others is, and adds that he won't forget what the lead did for him earlier. Then Hunju steps up, expressing his wish to go with Major Jin's friend, believing it's his duty to keep him safe. Jiansu sighs and lets him follow. As those two leave, Jiansu asks Chang Sik if he wants to collab, hoping they can help each other out. A while later, they reach an inner area of the ship that looks like a shopping mall. There, they find the elevators, and Uncle Chong suggests using them. Unexpectedly, a zombie appears near the elevator. Our hero doesn't hesitate and takes it out with his axe. Uncle Chong concludes there are other people on board. Considering the massive size of the ship, Jiansu estimates there could be nearly 2,000 people here, which raises the zombie count significantly. Jiansu shudders, wondering if he should have just stayed on a lifeboat. He turns to Uncle Chong and suggests finding a weapon for him. Surprisingly, our guy walks into a clothing store. Black Fur Ball looks like he's vibing, and Jiansu decides to score something for him too. The dog heads straight for the pet food section, so our protagonist grabs some treats for him. As he grabs more food to stockpile, he finds Ji Young's medical supplies there, which turns out to be a total lifesaver right now, since this ship also has a medical bay. Suddenly, Black Fur Ball heads to the pet accessory aisle, wanting Jiansu to pick out a collar for him. After putting on a collar, Black Fur Ball looks even more badass. While our guy is thinking about Uncle Chong, the old man sneaks up behind him showing off his flashy outfit. Jiansu is speechless, making the uncle wonder if he looks goofy, but Jiansu shakes it off because he expected him to find a weapon instead. Yonsu grabs a nurba up and rips the handle off the mop head. Then he advises the uncle to use the handle as a weapon, saying a long-range weapon is the best bet for a noob. Now, they head toward the elevator. When the elevator doors open, both are on high alert, gripping their weapons tight. The elevator seems fine, and they step inside. The homies in the chat start trolling about them being too paranoid, but our hero reminds them that zombies can play dead or drop from the ceiling. As they reach the 4th floor, the shop updates while a terrifying zombie attacks the elevator, mangling the doors pretty badly. They stop at the 5th floor, and our hero rushes out immediately to face the scary zombie from that floor. That zombie makes a horrific loud noise, and the homies say it's a red zombie, ones that are extremely aggressive due to their presence. Our hero notes that they can't go back down via elevator. Uncle Chong from behind John, Sue reminds him they can't linger and suggests they keep moving. Both run upstairs while Maxed Out cheers John Sue on, saying he's got this. However, he's feeling pretty anxious. He wonders if they should have gone up via the ship's exterior, but concludes it would definitely be more dangerous. So he decides to push through the interior. As they move up, Uncle Chong spots a zombie heading their way, but our guy takes it out with his axe. As the aggro skill counts down to 1, he realizes that the red zombie doesn't seem to give a damn about him. As they continue, they can hear the terrifying sounds of that red zombie. Finally, they reach the entrance of a theater. Jiansu points out that if this is a multi-level theater, they can head up through here. But when the uncle opens the door, he freezes at the sight of a group of unconscious people lying on the floor. Jiansu checks them and concludes they're still breathing. He then decides to find another way and closes the door as they leave. He decides to take the most direct, fast, and quiet route possible ahead. They see an escalator packed with unconscious people just like the others. Both of them shudder because they don't know much about this situation. After asking the homies, our hero learns these people are harmless, but they should watch out for whatever made them like this. Without overthinking, John-soo moves forward, stepping over those unconscious bodies. However, Uncle Chong hesitates, but upon hearing the terrifying sound of that red zombie, he starts moving too. The old man felt guilty for stepping on people. When they reached the next floor, the uncle believed nothing could faze our protagonist and wondered what kind of training he had gone through. John-soo acted like he had truly survived some horrific training, and the uncle seemed to buy it. After a few minutes, they reached another staircase where they saw more of those unconscious people. Unfortunately, they heard strange noises coming from above. John-soo headed upstairs and saw a zombie devouring an unconscious person. He took out that zombie immediately, but he was stunned to see these people waking up even after being bitten. Meanwhile, his homie stayed silent to avoid any spoilers. Next, our hero called out to Uncle Chong and said they could move on since the path was clear. But out of nowhere, a red zombie appeared. In that situation, John-soo told Uncle Chong to run upstairs while he decided to face the zombie alone. Unexpectedly, the uncle rushed in with his pole, not wanting to be saved by our guy every single time. However, the pole did nothing to the zombie, and it lunged straight at our protagonist. With the pole in its mouth, the zombie tried to attack our hero, but the stick kept it from reaching its target. Then John-soo swung his axe, but it turned out one hit wasn't enough to take it down. When he slashed its neck, the zombie screamed in agony. And thanks to that, our hero discovered its weak spot. Meanwhile, Black Fur Ball tried to bite its leg. As the zombie shifted its attention to the dog, our guy slashed its neck immediately, and the zombie was finished. The uncle anxiously ran back to him, while John-soo felt lucky he had found the zombie's weakness just in time. After praising Black Fur Ball for the assist, our hero advised Uncle Chong to listen to him next time when he says run, deep down. John-soo wanted to avoid unnecessary sacrifices. Suddenly, Black Fur Ball started barking as it ran upstairs, having spotted someone. When John-soo and the uncle got there, they were shocked to find 3 red zombies in one place. Unfortunately, all 3 approached our hero at the same time. However, he ducked, causing all 3 to collide with each other. Luckily, the uncle used a fire extinguisher to spray the zombies and find an escape route. Suddenly, a door ahead was opened by a flight attendant. She called them over. After entering the next area, the door closed, leaving the zombies on the other side. The attendant assured them that the zombies couldn't break through that door. She told them to follow her upstairs. After reaching the top floor, the attendant advised John-soo to put his axe down, but he insisted on keeping it. Opening the door next to her, she showed that they were in a safe zone because all other passages leading here had been blocked. Then she welcomed them to the SS Natala, seeing her name. Hana-song, our guy knew. She wasn't a foreigner, as he didn't know his country even had cruise ships. Then she explained the ship isn't Korean. The owner probably wanted to gain support from a local domestic line, which is why they hired so many Koreans. John-soo curiously asked why she saved them. She casually said she went there to check the area and happened to see the 3 of them in danger. The homies gave the green light, saying she was just a guide and could be trusted. But unfortunately, our hero learned from Hannah that the ship they were on wouldn't hold out much longer. She didn't explain much, but suggested they head to the bridge first, which they were using as a shelter. Our protagonist was surprised, wondering if the captain was still alive. According to Hannah, the captain was still alive and was the one who had been standing on the upper deck. After a few minutes, they reached the bridge, where some crew members are also present. Every single one of them is shocked to see our hero. The captain of the ship turns toward them, and Hannah explains that he's Russian, but can speak 5 languages. The captain apologizes to John-soo for not being able to rescue them personally. When our guy greets him, the captain is stunned to hear they boarded from Pohang Port. Though also taken aback by the captain's reaction, the captain says he didn't think they'd actually make it on like that, and adds they need to move the ship because they're in a tight spot now. John-soo is curious why the ship is anchored so far out, but the captain stays silent. However, Hannah and the other attendants try to calm our guy down, explaining that if they had gotten any closer, they would have been killed. The captain apologizes again, saying there's a reason they were forced to do that. Sensing something is fishy, our hero intentionally mentions the soldiers who were with him. He sits down and asks for some water. The male attendants get tilted seeing how arrogant he is. But John-soo coldly asks if asking for a glass of water is too much. The captain orders a crew member to get the water and tells someone to go with him. The attendant protests. Not wanting to leave the captain alone, but he insists he'll be fine, sensing the captain wants to talk privately. Our protagonist tells Uncle Chong-sik and Furball to go with them, after everyone leaves. The captain is curious about the soldiers John-Soo mentioned, suspecting he brought it up on purpose. Then our guy asks if the captain knows about the 7.5 division. The captain wonders if John-Soo is one of theirs. But our hero clarifies that he's not. The captain sighs, explaining that the division contacted him saying they'd be at the port and needed a ship. Surprisingly, the captain was looking forward to talking to the soldiers because the ship is in bad shape. They need soldiers to sweep the monsters, and there's no way to check if the other crew members are still alive. However, the captain felt something was off when those soldiers requested the ship anchor nearby, because they planned to board themselves. Our guy is stunned, and one of the homies wonders why he assumes this is the same 7.5 division John-Soo met. That thought makes our protagonist freeze. He realizes the captain couldn't have contacted the 7.5 division in Chongju through the ship's comms. He wonders if there's another 7.5 division nearby. He also learns that no soldiers actually made it on board. Then John-Soo asks if the captain sent the crew out on purpose because they don't know about this. The captain says they know everything except that he told them those soldiers were Navy, meaning he already felt something was wrong with the 7.5 division. He sighs and mutters that they need a ship to get to Jeju Island for a bigger objective. John-Soo is shocked the captain still plans to let them board, but he says he has no other choice. This ship won't last much longer because the control system is starting to fail, making it impossible to steer the ship properly. When our guy asks what the captain expects from soldiers, he says the engine room is located at the lowest part of the ship. That area is now crawling with monsters. As a result, all the engineers are dead except for one who is present here. He begs our hero to help deal with this problem, since he thinks he's the only one who can do it. At first, John-Soo hesitates, but then admits doing the impossible is kind of his specialty. Afterward, the crew brings the water to John-Soo. Uncle Chong-sik explains this area has been sealed off, blocking out a lot of the danger. A bit later, the captain discusses things with the crew. Meanwhile, John-Soo checks the shop and finds a new item called Mask Locator, even though he doesn't know what it does. Our hero trusts the homies and buys it, leaving him with a total of 74 gems. Right then, the captain finishes giving instructions to the crew. They are ready to help John-Soo. Our protagonist wonders if they really understood everything, especially the crewman named Young-ho Bae. Young-ho looks forward to working with John-Soo, but reminds him that he won't be playing errand boy for him. He refuses to follow orders and makes it clear they will look out for themselves. On the other hand, our guy is perfectly fine with that since he doesn't want to babysit anyone else either. Meanwhile, the homies clearly see the sparks flying between these two, and then everyone heads to the lockers to find suitable weapons. However, our hero already has his axe and is satisfied with it, while Young-ho decides to take a metal pipe. Once prepped, John-Soo checks the mask locator. It signals that something is nearby. He then asks the engineer if they know anything about the people passed out on the ship. The engineer explains it's actually caused by a small monster. It self-destructs when it gets close to someone. The gas it releases knocks people out like that. It seems there's no way to deal with that creature. Suddenly, the protagonist remembers his two companions who split up to chase someone looking like a kid. Now he wants to know how to handle those monsters, but the engineer is clueless, though he suggests wrapping a wet cloth around the face to avoid inhaling the toxic gas. After everyone wraps their faces with wet cloths, they decide to head downstairs. All the crew members leave, ignoring our hero. He notices Young-ho is just salty that a stranger is getting recognition from his captain. Then he calls Black Furball over and checks the radio comms. Down below, Young-ho decides to lead the way by opening the door, but he stays wary of our guy and glares at him. This doesn't faze John-Soo at all, but he knows the red zombies are still behind that door. So he raises his axe to prepare for the worst-case scenario. He explains they will run into monsters once they go down. While Young-ho prepares to open the door, John-Soo suddenly approaches him and signals everyone to be quiet. Then he tries to listen for the footsteps of the red zombies. When he senses nothing, our hero immediately backs away, leaving everyone confused. After regaining his composure, Young-ho opens the door, and luckily, there are no monsters on the other side. As our hero steps out, he sees the mask locator reporting 5 masks on the same floor while the arrow on it flashes. But John-Soo notices it flashes faster as he gets closer to the masks. Suddenly, they hear the loud noise of a zombie charging from nearby. The protagonist immediately tells everyone to press against the escalator railing. As everyone follows suit, he explains that these red zombies are like bulls. He instructs them to dodge the moment the monsters get close. The second the monsters close in, a red zombie appears, lunging to attack one of the crew members. And as it nears, our guy immediately pulls the crew member aside. The zombie slams into the railing and falls to the floor below, after losing its balance. But before they can catch their breath, several more red zombies swarm in. And this time, their target is Young-ho. Now, 2 red zombies are chasing after Young-ho. He ducks immediately, and one zombie plummets to the floor below, but he isn't quick enough to dodge the second one. Luckily, our hero gives him a hard kick backward, sending that zombie falling to the lower deck as well. Our guy asks Young-ho if he's okay, adding that the kick was necessary to save his life. Then he says he's going to look for masks somewhere. The engineer is curious, and John Soo explains that those cloths on their faces aren't enough protection, so they need something better. Surprisingly, Young-ho nods in agreement. A bit later, they all arrive at the dining area. Young-ho is curious about what our hero is holding, since it doesn't look like a pocket watch. However, our protagonist brushes it off, reminding Young-ho they should focus on the mission at hand. He points out that a veteran crew member like Young-ho knows more about the ship than he does, and bets Young-ho is familiar with everything on board. Young-ho happily agrees, so John-soo admits he's better at fighting, but knows nothing about ships. That's why he's putting his trust in Young-ho to lead the way. Our guy is determined to help them save this precious ship. With that said, they move on. The engineer points to a general storage room ahead, suspecting the masks might be in there. Standing at the door, they look inside and see a zombie. Our hero signals the engineer to open the door, and when a zombie steps out, he takes it down with his axe. The engineer praises him, and John-soo steps inside. He finds masks for everyone, but the joy fades as Black Furball follows him in with a sad face, thinking there are only masks for humans. As he's feeling bad for Black Furball, the dog notices something and points it out. To his surprise, the dog found a canine gas mask. The protagonist is stunned, since he's never heard of people putting gas masks on dogs. Then he reflects that since there's a pet shop on the ship, pets must definitely be allowed on board. Looking closely, he sees there are only 5 masks for humans. The rest are all for dogs and cats. He feels like the homies are hiding something, but they swear they're not. Then he puts the mask on Black Furball. After everyone is masked up, they hit the road again. On the way, they hear the zombies making terrifying sounds. Luckily, Young-ho suggests they take the crew-only passage. That path is known only to a few, so it should be safe from danger. They head to a secret staircase leading down, a passage connecting all the lower floors except the engine room. John-soo muses that the engine room has lost contact, since the monsters appeared, meaning they're heading closer to the danger. After a while, they finally reach the exit. Young-ho opens the door and signals everyone to move forward. However, out of nowhere, his mask is destroyed by a zombie. John-soo lunges and takes down the attacking zombie immediately. The crew members are worried about Young-ho, but our hero believes he hasn't been bitten yet. Meanwhile, the homies in the chat suggest taking him out right away, saying he'll turn soon anyway. When Young-ho takes off his mask, John-soo observes that the injury was caused by the shattered mask, not directly by the zombie. Young-ho is in agony because he has lost an eye. Therefore, our protagonist decides to leave him behind. When the others protest, John-soo reminds them they have other priorities and can't waste time finding a safe place for the injured. Young-ho agreed and advised his colleagues to focus on the mission, saying that doing so was also a way of helping him. The group continued their journey, only seeing ordinary zombies lurking around, but the numbers were lower compared to the upper floors. Suddenly, they heard a crash ahead. Our hero ordered Black Furball to go scout the area. Then he warned them not to go any deeper, explaining that the kid they tried to save turned out to be a monster. It explodes and releases dust after clinging to someone. Our protagonist was curious how Young-hun managed to survive until now. He explained that Mr. Cha had saved him. By the time they realized the kid was a monster, it was too late, and they were trapped in a narrow corridor. Mr. Cha closed the door and tried to face the monster alone to save Young-hun, but after inhaling the dust, he collapsed instantly. Young-hun saw him through the window, but didn't dare risk opening the door for fear the dust was still there. Now Young-hun felt terrible, but John-soo pointed out that he had no other choice. He pointed to his mask. Explaining they were prepared to deal with such threats, Young-hun admitted that if it wasn't for those scary eyes, he might not have recognized him. Our guy paused for a moment. Even though Maxed Out says he actually has kind eyes, he brushed it off and told the corporal to leave the area since he didn't have a mask. John-soo told him to stay alert and said if he went that way, he would find an injured crew member there. He also instructed him to head to the lifeboat they had used earlier to get here. After Young-hun left, the group finally reached the lowest floor. Inside the sealed corridor, they saw Mr. Cha lying unconscious when John-soo asked the homies how to cure that condition. One confirmed there's a way. Next, our hero instructed everyone to prioritize the engineer's safety. As soon as they stepped inside, they didn't know how long the repairs would take, but it was crucial to protect the engineer the whole time. 2 crew members took the lead. Suddenly, an ordinary zombie appeared, and the group took it out instantly. And then the small-sized zombie finally showed itself. As it neared, it exploded, releasing toxic gas. Luckily, everyone was wearing masks. But before they could do anything, 2 dust monsters lunged out at the same time. One grabbed a crew member and exploded. Meanwhile, the second zombie tried to grab Jansu. But luckily, Black Furball rammed into it and knocked it away. Immediately after, our guy rushed to the fallen crew member. But sadly, he was already gone because his mask had come loose, with no other choice. The remaining members had to leave him behind and push forward. They neared the engine room and closed the nearest door. Meanwhile, Maxed Out advised our hero to be careful, because there are things he might not notice since he's wearing a mask. Gritting his teeth, he decided to take off Black Furball's mask, relying on him to use his sense of smell to assist. Black Furball followed Jansu's lead, staying alert for anything unusual. As he ran ahead, our protagonist suddenly saw a teddy bear. He immediately followed it, and finally found a chest marked with a paw print worth 20 gems. From this, he realized it wasn't a coincidence that this ship allowed pets, and even had masks for dogs and cats. He was stunned. We found canned food inside the chest. In the meantime, Black Furball returned as if he had already found something. Jansu called the remaining crew member to follow Black Furball. As our hero ventured deeper into the engine area, he sees the engineers trapped under rubble while hot gas leaks from the pipes. Turns out it's oil mist when the crew member arrives. He immediately sees the chief engineer pinned down, but didn't expect that he had already turned into a zombie. Suddenly, they hear the roar of a red zombie as they try to make a break for it. A dust monster spots them and vents gas. Jansu decides to fall back, but another dust monster vents gas right near him out of the blue. He sees a pack of red zombies jumping down from the bridge ahead. Upon landing, they release even more gas, and the whole area is swallowed by a thick fog. Unable to see clearly, our protagonist mistakes a red zombie for the engineer. The zombie lunges at our hero instantly, but he doesn't back down and lands consecutive hits on the zombie. After losing its balance, the red zombie slams hard against the wall. Seizing the opening, our guy slashes its neck 10 times to finish it off for good. At this point, he's gasping for air, and, unfortunately, he discovers his arm has been bitten. He panics, immediately tying a piece of cloth around his arm to stop the zombie virus from spreading. He frantically wonders if he really got bitten. When did it even happen? He can't recall, because everything was a blur. He flashes back to the recent chaos, being chased by dust monsters and then the red zombie encounter. Meanwhile, the homies try to chill him out, but after regaining his composure, Jansu prepares to hack off his own arm. Jansu stops when Maxed Out tells him to hold up, insisting he'll be just fine. He looks hesitant, but the hardcore fan tells him to just leave it be, saying it's pretty much the same thing. Our guy is confused, and also mentions he's got no time to waste here. The other homies also tell him not to chop his arm off, while Crying Lunatic says he's already handled it. Maxed Out asserts it once more, as they wonder if he actually trusts them. However, our protagonist just gets more confused, wondering if he's okay, and noticing he feels nothing but pain. He figures the hot smoke is why he's out of breath. He finally decides to trust the homies and pushes forward. After a few minutes, our hero finds the engineer lying unconscious and realizes he's already dead. Meanwhile, another crew member along with the dog finds him. Seeing the situation, Jansu decides to head back, but the crewman anxiously asks about the ship. Explaining that oil is leaking, the engineer is dead, and the ship could blow at any moment. They need to get to the lifeboats to save themselves. As our guy decides to leave, he contacts Hannah, explaining the whole situation to her and reporting their move to the lifeboats. The ship begins to list to one side, while the system displays for him the information he had received earlier. Suddenly, something explodes behind them, and the crewman urges them to close the bulkhead doors to block the danger. However, our protagonist reminds him they seriously need to get out, but despite that, the worker still leaves to shut those doors. Afterward, Jansu goes with Black Furball, and they find Young-ho. When Young-ho learns the situation, he decides to stay behind, not wanting to abandon his colleagues. As Jansu moves on, he decides he won't forget the memories of them working together. He finally makes it outside as a series of explosions erupts. The soldier named Young-hun was already there. Hannah will also be there in 5 minutes. Our hero only hopes to save at least one more person. He recalls that ever since being separated from his group, he hasn't been able to form a decent squad. Meanwhile, Hannah finally arrives, saying the captain decided to stay behind. And Uncle Chong-sik is nowhere to be found. Wasting no more time, our protagonist decides to lower the boat. Afterward, John-soo sits in the cockpit, sighing with regret because he only saved 2 people despite boarding with many more. Seeing the warning info about potential hazards at sea, he knows they aren't safe yet. Meanwhile, Hannah tells Young-hun that the captain decided to stay because he couldn't abandon the ship and the passengers. He also decided he would protect those who were leaving the ship. On the other hand, our guy's condition is getting worse, and he wonders if boarding the ship was even the right call. Aside from the safety of the furball, he gained nothing at all. His body is drenched in sweat. As he asks the homies why they aren't responding, suddenly, he feels a sharp pain and his vision goes blurry. The system displays a warning that his life is in danger. The wound is getting worse, and his body refuses to move anymore. He locks the cockpit door, not wanting the other 2 to get close. They realize what's actually happening. Our protagonist is starting to turn. He mutters to Maxed Out that they said he'd be fine. But this hardcore fan refuses to answer Maxed Out. They praise his progress up to this point, but they fear he'll end up like this. One homie says Maxed Out nominated Crying Lunatic for a reason. Others say they're collabing. Yonsukov's violently, feeling his joints twist in agony while his body burns like fire. Sadly, the system announces he is in critical condition. The system beeps loudly as the hero's eyes close. A moment later, his eyes snap open with a craving for human flesh. In his zombie form, he lunges to grab Young-hun, wanting to eat him alive. The corporal kicks him back, and as he lies there, our guy realizes he can no longer read the chat. He scrambles up, determined to feast on Young-hun again. And Young-hun quickly opens the emergency hatch. Unexpectedly, the system announces a skill is unlocking and will take effect in 30 seconds. However, he still manages to grab the soldier. After a struggle, Young-hun falls into the sea. The countdown ends and the recovery skill activates. A blue light surrounds the protagonist, and he returns to normal. His body goes back to how it was before, except for the scar from the old wound. Other than that, he is perfectly healthy. He calls for the corporal, but there's no response. Turning back to look at Hannah, he wonders if she got bitten. The homies are overjoyed to see him alive, realizing that he was just resurrected. Looking at the skill panel, John-soo knows he just used the recovery skill, which was locked when he boarded the ship. The skill takes 30 seconds to trigger after the player dies from infection, and he notices the notification appeared after more than 30 seconds. Now he's worried about Hannah because she might have been bitten. As he observes her more closely, he finds no injuries. He asks the homies what just happened while he was a zombie. He steps closer. Hannah turns around and suddenly grabs him. She wonders if she scared him, knowing she caught him off guard. Our hero is more confused than ever, and she can feel his heavy breathing. John-soo immediately pulls away, realizing that even though she looks like Hannah, someone else is inside, the girl in. Hannah's body mentions that they already know each other. Meanwhile, the mod lifts the chat ban on certain words, and comments from the homies flood in. Everyone is floored that everything was set up just for this. Our guy is still confused while the girl with Hannah's appearance grabs his collar, clearly enjoying seeing his reaction up close. When the protagonist presses her on who she is, she finally admits she is maxed out. Hearing that, John-soo screams at the top of his lungs. She gazes at the hero, gently cupping his face. He totally doesn't believe her, and Maxed Out explains she did a lot to make this happen. She used a huge chunk of savings and planted a mod. She says she knew all along he'd ask her to nominate a mod, and asserts that this wouldn't have happened if John-soo hadn't received that critical warning. She also explains she needed to meet certain conditions to unlock the new fan meeting feature, and that critical warning was her condition. The protagonist learns that. The audience also has special in-game features, including the fan meeting feature. He also realizes the chat ban was to ensure no one could interfere, even in a critical state. John-soo stands frozen as everything comes to light. Turns out he can't change mods without the hardcore fans' approval. The hero feels uneasy, realizing he fell right into Maxed Out's trap. He let his guard down because she was his only hardcore fan, and she didn't stop him even when he hit a rough patch on the ship. He asks what her goal is. Knowing she wouldn't do all this just for an autograph, he wonders if she is actually here in the flesh. And Maxed Out points at his strategy to probe further. But all the guy wants is to know more about this new feature, and he learns she can't stay for more than an hour, so she doesn't want to waste time talking about boring stuff. She also needs agreement from other hardcore fans, but John-soo doesn't even have any other hardcore fans. Next, Maxed Out changes the subject, reminding him she can't leak spoilers like before, but she can still do a few things while she's here. And she covers his ears. During that time, someone hums from the sea for a few minutes. But our protagonist still feels like someone is singing even when the sound stops. Maxed Out explains those are sirens, and anyone who hears their song will lose control. Jansu notes that he didn't expect the difficulty to be this high. But Maxed Out is unaffected since she's only present spiritually, and she wants him to sit down next to her. Jansu doesn't see the point of chatting in a world that's falling apart. However, Maxed Out points to his eyes, saying they can't reveal what's actually going on in his mind. She feels happy to experience the vibes of this world. The guy curiously wonders if she's from another world. She doesn't give a straight answer, but the hero feels certain she doesn't come from the same place as him. According to him, players in the audience shouldn't get mixed up, because everything will start to fall apart. When the audience interferes with the player, he knows Maxed Out means well, but thinks she has gone too far. Then he presses her on whether this is the only time they'll meet. This makes her ask back if that would disappoint him. But she knows he acts this way for a reason. After all, he is the one chosen by the only one. She wonders if he's considering choosing an audience member, but Jansu isn't interested at all. Turns out to do that, he'd have to meet specific conditions. Meanwhile, the protagonist freezes, wondering if she'll force him to use his recovery skill again. He points out that this situation feels both simple and not simple at all. He learns that fan meetings can only happen once every 3 days, even though Maxed Out finds it boring to discuss these details. She was still vibing with being able to stay like this. Suddenly, Black Fur Ball poked his head out from the cockpit, and Jansu realized he had been hiding somewhere. The moment he turned into a zombie. He was surprised to see Black Fur Ball wouldn't go near Maxed Out. The dog was clearly terrified of her, leaving the hero stunned, wondering what Black Fur Ball saw in Maxed Out. Suddenly, a ship approached their boat. His hardcore fan peeked out, and the ship finally took notice of them. Surprisingly, the people on board mocked them for traveling in such a tiny boat. The hardcore fan told the guy not to do anything and insisted that he should just get some rest. A few minutes later, the ship moved on, but none of the homies provided any intel about it. A moment later, Jansu witnessed that very ship being destroyed by an Emperor-class monster. Right after that, he checked the info panel, which gave details about the sea mist, and noted he had died once, while also unlocking the death-defying title. The third piece of info showed the real-time notification was active, and he'd get updates as things went down. He decided to stop the boat, not wanting to mess with a massive monster like that. But Maxed Out reassured him they'd be fine, reminding him that the dangers for small boats and large ships are different, something already mentioned in his info panel. Then he learned that the siren from earlier was actually just a minor threat. Those sirens don't bother with larger things because they can't climb up. On the other hand, the Emperor-class monster Kraken only targets ships of its own size. Meanwhile, telling our protagonist to sit down. She advised him to take the chance to get some sleep. Despite some initial hesitation, our guy closed his eyes. He thought he couldn't sleep in this situation, but the hardcore fan promised him she wouldn't be clingy. Then she asked if she would need that body the next time she appeared. She shook her head, but added that whether she stays or not is up to him. Finally, he drifted off to sleep. When he opened his eyes, the sun was high in the sky. Meanwhile, Maxed Out was asleep with her head resting on his shoulder. When she woke up, she immediately smacked him on the head out of embarrassment. As she started panicking, he realized Maxed Out had vanished. Hannah was clearly embarrassed and demanded an explanation, but Jansu insisted that they had both passed out. He made up a story about a monster surfacing and messing with their brains, causing her to lose her memory and lie there unconscious. He explained that Corporal Yong-hun had fallen into the sea and was still missing. Then he noticed their lifeboat had come to a halt and couldn't figure out where the engine had failed. It seemed the Kraken had also disappeared since nothing was happening, even though their boat was completely exposed. Finding no clues, he called out Maxed Out's name. However, according to the homies after the fan meeting, her chat was locked for 3 days. Someone suggested contacting her through private community messages, but it turned out those were locked too during this conversation. Our hero learned that they even had a community and could meet up in person. Meanwhile, Black Fur Ball was hiding under a cloth. We crawled out. Jansu took the mask off him, gave him some water, and handed him the treat he got from the chest. When Hannah appeared, he recalled Maxed Out's face and sighed. Hannah noticed this and started getting anxious about his attitude. But our guy lied, saying he sighed because of the current situation. Then he asked what they should do if the lifeboat stayed dead. However, Hannah only knew they could rely on distress signals, since these boats are equipped with signaling devices. This made our protagonist feel stressed, because even in a normal world, waiting for a rescue at sea is already a nightmare. In short, their only realistic option was to fire a flare if they saw someone nearby. Jansu suggested they get some rest, believing it would be a while before they were rescued, as Hannah sat down. She admitted she really didn't remember what happened to her. She feels guilty knowing the captain trusted her with the responsibility of keeping the others safe. Next, our hero wonders if she has any special skills, and Hannah mentions her gymnastics background. Our guy insists on having her show off those skills, saying he wants to decide whether or not it's worth helping her survive. With a determined look, she performs an acrobatic flip. All the homies, including John-Soo, are stunned by her flexibility. Suddenly, a helicopter flies by, but unfortunately, the flare they have is a dud. They also realize there are no other flares left on the boat. After finding a whistle, Hannah blows it as hard as she possibly can, but the helicopter still doesn't notice them. John-Soo advises her not to use it recklessly since it might attract monsters. Then he wonders why there aren't any backup flares. And Hannah suddenly remembers someone used the flare gun as a weapon on the ship. Normally, there'd be a spare. So she wonders if someone swiped it. After finishing its meal, Black Furball barks, and the system announces it has reached level 2, and can now check its status in the pet window. Our protagonist can hardly believe it. While Black Furball barks with pure confidence from the pet window, he discovers Black Furball's skill, Dog Glow. This skill has a range of up to 5 kilometers and can be used for 5 minutes, 3 times a week. Suddenly, 2 helicopters appear nearby. Not knowing how to trigger the skill, our hero embarrassingly shouts the skill name out loud. To his surprise, Black Furball starts glowing, emitting a golden light so intense that John-Soo's eyes can't take it. He falls onto Hannah, yelling to turn down the brightness. The comment section gets hype, excited by Black Furball's performance. However, the helicopters continue to fly away without noticing them, as Hannah lies there. She's flustered while our guy comments that it's his first time seeing this too. However, Hannah points out that he just said Dog Glow, but John-Soo flat out denies it. Hugging the glowing Black Furball, he happily realizes they won't need flares anymore. He insists he has no idea what happened to Black Furball and claims it doesn't matter as long as it helps them. He places Black Furball on the roof of the boat. He mentions the Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star poem because he knows the dog totally understands him. Then he gives clear instructions to Black Furball to flash the light if he sees any helicopters flying over. After going inside the boat, he reassures Hannah that Black Furball can handle it and that it's safer for both of them this way. He feels there's a high chance more helicopters will fly by since they've already seen a few in the area. The one who guided him to this point was maxed out, and our guy suspects that she wouldn't just leave him to die like this. However, he still can't help feeling uneasy about the engine failure and the flares suddenly going missing. He asks Hannah how old she is. She's surprised, but he explains he wants to get to know each other and guesses they're around the same age. Turns out he's right. Both are 26. Wanting to test her loyalty, our protagonist asks if they can trust anyone they meet in the future. He adds that with the current state of the world, it's impossible to survive without allies. If others find out they're just temporary partners, people might try to take advantage of them. He suggests Hannah act as if they know each other well, and she plays along, asking if simply making others believe they're good friends is enough. After a nod, John-Soo tells her to act as if they've been through life and death together. Meanwhile, Black Furball glows as he spots a helicopter, and John-Soo along with Hannah get ready. Someone on the helicopter notices them and lowers the aircraft's altitude in just a moment. About 10 more helicopters appear. However, our hero is worried about one thing. The noise from the choppers might provoke the Kraken. Just then, a helicopter drops a rescue stretcher but doesn't send anyone down with it. There are 2 possibilities. Either they're short-handed or they don't want to risk sending someone down. As soon as the 3 of them step onto the stretcher, the Kraken grabs the lifeboat. The homies explain that the Kraken attacks whatever it perceives as a threat, and the noise from the helicopters has pissed it off. John-Soo quickly calls for an offer, discarding his bag in exchange for a reward that has the total weight on the stretcher for 3 minutes. It's pretty pricey, costing 68 gems. Meanwhile, the pilot tries to pull the helicopter higher, causing the stretcher to sway violently. And our protagonist screams at him to stop. The master suddenly accepts the offer, so our guy tosses his bag into the sea, and the reward is applied. Even though the weight is cut in half, they still struggle to keep their balance on the stretcher. Before long, the Kraken's tentacles reach for them. John-Soo yells for the helicopter to fly up. Unfortunately, a tentacle lashes out at the stretcher, causing Black Furball to fall. Luckily, Hannah catches Black Furball's leg, and her foot gets caught in the safety strap, keeping her from falling, hanging onto Hannah's leg. Our protagonist demands they drop a rope down. When a rope is finally lowered from the helicopter, Black Furball snags it, and all 3 of them manage to get onto the helicopter. Both Hannah and Black Furball get inside, but when it's John-Soo's turn, his weight returns to normal, and he loses his balance, nearly falling before Hannah grabs his hand and saves him. After successfully boarding the helicopter, our protagonist acts tough, saying he would have been fine even without Hannah's help. And she just shrugs it off. Meanwhile, the homies praise her move and point out John-Soo's awkwardness after he thanks her. The firefighter humbly says they couldn't help everyone who needed them. After noticing the helicopter only has one pilot and one firefighter, our hero remarks. But they saved a very important person, so it's all good. After drinking some water, John-Soo offers some to Hannah, saying that if she accepts, it means he still would have been okay on his own. Seeing Hannah's annoyed face, he quickly says it was just a joke. Inside, he's panicking, not knowing why he's acting like such a jerk after being helped. He thinks Hannah wouldn't be that good if Maxed Out hadn't taken over her body. Then turning to the nurse, he asks about the destination and learns they are heading to Jeju Island. According to the nurse, other routes are much more dangerous than this one. He says someone from Jeju reported that the airport defenses are still holding. As long as they get inside the building, they'll be safe. And that's why everyone is flocking to Jeju Airport when John-Soo asks if this info was put out by the military. The nurse reveals they don't know the source's identity, only that it's a safe zone. The protagonist is stunned to learn that was enough for them to trust it, and the nurse explains people are desperate for shelter, since they have no choice but to believe them. John-Soo curiously asked if there were any places other than Jeju Island, but the nurse wasn't sure either. Our hero wondered if Jeju Island would be his final destination. He felt like he had missed something along the way. After thinking for a moment, the nurse revealed rumors that some people were heading to Seoul, the complete opposite direction of Jeju Island. But in the end, John-Soo couldn't squeeze any more important intel out of the nurse. Suddenly, his info panel updated with a warning about a potential danger waiting on Jeju Island, and that Jeju Airport was full of things he would need. Additionally, Min Cheon. Then he contacted the pilot to ask about their destination, but the pilot didn't give a straight answer. John-Soo then requested the pilot land in a more deserted area instead of flying straight to the airport. The pilot gave another confusing response. Looking closely, it turned out this pilot wasn't a pro rescuer. According to the nurse, he just found this guy, and since they needed someone to fly the chopper, he asked for his help. Putting on the headset, John-Soo insisted the pilot land somewhere else. Since they didn't know what was waiting for them at the airport, the pilot just gave a half-hearted reply. Suddenly, they saw countless planes heading toward Jeju Island, so the protagonist insisted on landing elsewhere, fearing they'd collide and die. However, the pilot was hell-bent on landing at the airport. This made John-Soo go ballistic. A moment later, they saw moths attacking the planes. A few of them exploded. With no other choice, the pilot flew the chopper at full throttle while dodging the monsters. Meanwhile, Hannah and Black Furball were getting tossed around inside. After a few minutes, they finally flew out of the danger zone, but John-Soo was still frowning as he noticed the moths had caused such chaos that the pilots were blocking each other. If this kept up, they'd crash into each other soon. Everyone was panicking, not knowing who the monster's next target would be. They couldn't even jump into the water because of potential hazards. Then our hero asked the pilot to let him hear what the others were saying on the common channel. Once connected, he heard the pilots cursing and mocking each other while trying to find their own way out. The pilot then said it was impossible to work with people with such toxic attitudes. He seemed reluctant to land anywhere but Jeju Airport. John-Soo immediately came up with a plan. He asked the pilot about his skill level, and when he claimed to be an expert, our hero asked if he could fly. With his eyes closed, the pilot replied he could do it if he had seen a flight path beforehand. At that moment, John-Soo announced he decided to use a flare. A moment later, Black Furball was suspended beneath the helicopter and used its skill. The light it emitted was so blinding that the other pilots couldn't see the path, and planes began to collide over the common comms. The protagonist could clearly hear their screams and seemed to be enjoying the chaos. Just minutes before, John-Soo had discussed the plan with the pilot. The pilot pointed out they had no flares left, but the kid was confident, saying he had something much better. He asked again if the pilot could fly blind, and he replied it wouldn't be a problem unless a flare went off right in front of him. John-Soo suggested the pilot put on sunglasses and then connected to the public comms. He tried to negotiate, reminding the other pilots they wouldn't be able to land safely if this kept up. Despite his warning, the others refused to listen, so our hero emphasized that they'd all end up in a world of hurt at Jeju Airport if they didn't cooperate. Even when he called for everyone to work together, one pilot kept cursing at him and claimed the people with him were more precious than anyone else there. This made John-Soo lose his temper. He ties the rope to Black Furball and advises everyone to wear sunglasses if they want to survive, but the pilots keep cussing him out. Giving them one last chance to mask up, the protagonist still gets the same toxic reaction. Annoyed, he drops Black Furball down and orders him to use his power at max level. Back to the present. Black Furball is glowing blindingly below while the other planes collide and drop like flies. After a few minutes, only their helicopter is still airborne while all the others have been completely destroyed, pulling Black Furball back up. Yunsu happily announces that everyone else has crashed after the accident. Finally, they land safely at Jeju Airport. The firefighter looks at them with visible terror, while our hero simply says goodbye as the group prepares to move on. Deep down, Jeonsu knows why the firefighter is looking at him like that. He was the reason all those planes went down. Meanwhile, the pilot stands aside watching their backs. Jeonsu gives a slight nod and walks straight ahead, not wanting to get involved with such a stubborn jerk. He recalls the warnings about being cautious with the people at Jeju Airport. A few minutes later, the group peeks inside the main building. Seeing nothing unusual, they step inside. Strangely, there isn't a single person or monster in sight, and the area is unexpectedly clean. Going deeper inside, Jeonsu notices some moss, but the homies watching the live quickly explain that it's hell moss. If anyone touches it, they'll turn into a moss ball and evaporate instantly. Our hero decides to steer clear of it. Suddenly, Black Furball detects someone lying ahead. After checking closely, he points out that the person isn't a zombie. Surprisingly, the person wakes up and screams at the top of their lungs upon seeing Jeonsu's group. The stranger gets up, seemingly about to attack Jeonsu, but eats a kick instead. As he falls down, he pins him with his foot and demands his identity. Hannah suggests checking if the stranger has weapons, but Jeonsu orders Black Furball to handle the frisking. The result is that no weapons are found. Our hero is convinced that this blonde stranger isn't just some random guy looking for trouble. The blonde guy insists he's homeless, but Jeonsu remains suspicious. The man repeats that he's truly homeless, explaining he reacted that way because he saw the axe in Jeonsu's hand. Threatened with the axe, the stranger confesses he's a solo traveler, a British Korean who started his journey from the UK and planned to transit here to go to China. The protagonist tries to confirm if the flights were cancelled, leaving him stranded at the airport. The blonde guy confirms it. So, Jeonsu asks him if he knows what's happening outside. The stranger looks confused and denies seeing any monsters or zombies. The guy doesn't buy it and presses his foot down harder under the pressure. The man swears he has no reason to lie and truly doesn't know what makes everyone outside so scared. Jeonsu finally lets go after hearing that. With a sigh, the stranger reveals he has never gone outside, though others have. He says the first floor, which is for domestic flights, is packed with refugees from nearby areas. At this point, our hero points out a contradiction. The man says everyone is scared of monsters, but claims he's never seen one himself. The blonde guy tries to convince him that while he personally hasn't seen anything, others have. Meanwhile, Jeonsu observes that many people have left the airport, but the runways are empty, proving something definitely went down. The protagonist decides he needs to investigate the floors below, but the stranger wonders why they don't just ask him directly to save the trouble. Turns out the man is terrified of the people on the floors below. He says he has a bad vibe about them. He advises Jeonsu not to go down there, saying he's stopping him for his own good because those people will come up and target Jeonsu too. Our guy wonders why the stranger chose to stay here instead of waiting on the third floor, which is for international flights. The blonde guy says he's sick of waiting, so he decided to check out the other floors. Plus, no one on the upper floors is bothering him. He repeats his warning about going down to those savages, mentioning Division 7.5. Hearing Division 7.5 mentioned, our guy leans in to find out more. It turns out Division 7.5 promised to lead everyone to safety if the airport was secured, but they never showed up. Jeonsu asks for Hannah's opinion, and she thinks they need proof to confirm if this stranger is being legit. Leaning in close, Hannah demands to see both his passport and flight ticket, explaining she knows his connecting flight is with the same airline. The blonde guy only wants to show his passport, but Hannah insists on seeing both. As the man fumbles through his pockets, he realizes he left those things in a bag elsewhere. Jeonsu decides to send Black Furball with him, just in case. While waiting for them to return, our protagonist discusses with the homies that he simply doesn't want to miss anything. That's why he hasn't kicked the blonde guy to the curb yet. Deep down, our hero believes things will get a lot sweatier once they hit the lower floors. After checking, the group confirms that he wasn't lying. Even so, Jeonsu decides to stay alert, listening to the man, but not fully trusting him, and also learns his name is Hugh Howard Thomas. He suggests that it would be best for Hugh to be their guide, but Hugh refuses, saying he doesn't want to get involved with those people downstairs, wasting no more time. The guy decides to move on without Hugh. A moment later, the group crosses a corridor. Suddenly, the protagonist spots Only Bear and immediately gives chase, leaving the others behind. Unexpectedly, John-Soo comes across two chests at the same time. John-Soo freezes when he sees two chests appear at once. One chest needs 6 gems to open, while the other requires 23 gems. The guy decides not to waste gems here, thinking it might cause trouble later. With that thought, he opens the 6-gem chest first and finds a flashlight, identical to the one he received before. Even though this item was once valuable to him, now it's nothing impressive. Unsatisfied, he tries the second chest immediately and receives a key. As soon as the protagonist grabs it, the hype kicks in, and he's certain the key will open the door, leading to a safe room or an exit. At the same time, one of the homies donates 1 gem to our hero. Finding the key is proof that this isn't a low-level area. Suddenly, Hannah's scream echoes through the space. When John-Soo turns around, he notices Black Fur Ball is right next to him and snaps at it, asking what the hell it's doing there. A few minutes later, they find Hannah being restrained by 2 police officers. When John-Soo tries to talk to Black Fur Ball, it sulks, and he remembers he just snapped at it. Feeling guilty, he apologizes and promises to give Black Fur Ball some good treats. Once the dog's mood brightens up, John-Soo tells it to attack the cop on the left while he takes care of the one on the right. Counting to 3, the guy attacks one police officer, but Black Fur Ball fails to handle the other one. The homies tease him about Black Fur Ball's affection bar, but our hero has no clue what they're talking about. Meanwhile, the surviving officer screams, demanding to know John-Soo's identity, making it clear he suspects they are outsiders. When John-Soo confirms this, the officer gets pissed, blaming him for causing chaos in the airport. He admits he hoped all the newcomers would be killed by the flying monsters, and now that he's found outsiders, he decides he needs to take them out. Hannah is struggling to breathe, so the guy demands the officer let her go. Unexpectedly, Hannah takes back the initiative, unleashing a series of kicks and punches from multiple angles until the police officer collapses. Right then, Black Fur Ball bites the officer's lip. A second later, John-Soo stops him, saying they still need the officer to answer some questions. The homies complain about treating the police like that, but the protagonist suspects this guy stole the uniform because he looks way too young for such a high rank. When John-Soo asks for his identity, the man can't speak clearly. The only word our hero hears is Vision before he can press further. A moment later, the man faints. John-Soo complains that he's too weak for passing out so fast. Before Hannah and the guy can have a proper talk, the second officer wakes up. Seeing this, the protagonist quickly cooks up a plan. Shortly after, in a sparkling clean and airy restroom, John-Soo ties the man with the busted lip to the toilet tank. The man wakes up when our hero splashes water in his face. For some reason, John-Soo is now wearing the police uniform. As the man comes to, our hero announces that they are in a restroom. When the man resists, John-Soo jokes about mugging him and asks if the uniform suits him. Ignoring the teasing from the homies, the guy asks the man why they are at the airport and living there. However, the man stays silent and refuses to spill anything. John-Soo threatens him, saying his buddy acted up and has already been taken somewhere else. Then the protagonist starts threatening the tied-up man with his axe. Just as the blade is about to swing down, the tied-up guy cracks, begging for his life and deciding to spill everything. The prisoner reveals there are about 100 people here, all waiting for a bus on the first floor. Turns out Division 7.5 is supposed to send that bus. The homies point out that he shared this info surprisingly fast. Then the man mentions he has something John-Soo doesn't, explaining that Division 7.5 will only allow the chosen ones on the bus. The guy then asks why they're attacking outsiders instead of just getting on the bus. The man reveals the division won't send the bus anymore because outsiders have blended in with the chosen ones. However, John-Soo points out that Division 7.5 has abandoned them, and there's no guarantee a bus is actually coming anytime soon. The prisoner gets triggered by being called a liar, even though the protagonist is just using logic. Then the man confesses that everyone on the lower floor is waiting to take out outsiders. He smirks, saying the first floor is totally locked down, and no one can get inside. John-Soo views this situation like a survival game, realizing he has to escape while dodging every enemy. He remarks that he's just an outcast, like a total loser. Our hero wonders if the first floor is locked to control the early birds. He theorizes the path to the runway was left open on purpose to lure more people in and wipe them out. Having learned everything, John-Soo decides to finish off the man. As he makes his move, the guy reminds him that they are enemies. After finishing up, he goes outside and finds Hannah wearing a police uniform. She says she's only wearing the top, and the pants are from a nearby shop. Just then, Black Fur Ball shows up with a pair of dog sunglasses. He wants the protagonist to put the shades on him. John-Soo realizes Black Furball is acting this way because of how he treated him on the chopper. Black Furball looks stoked wearing the shades. While thinking about what to do next, our hero recalls what Hugh said about the defense group. He considers the possibility that Hugh might be working with that group and decides that something is off about Hugh. Later, at a shop, they grab some bags. John-Soo crafts a weapon, chain knuckles for Hannah, using a chain from another bag, telling her to use it for self-defense and not for fighting monsters. Now the group is ready to head up to the third floor. Unexpectedly, they find a sky bridge connecting to the third floor that none of them had seen before. But as they get closer, they discover the bridge has been completely destroyed. Looking closer, the protagonist concludes this is definitely the work of Division 7.5. Meanwhile, Hannah is about to touch a bright red flower. But John-Soo quickly pulls her back as the flowers lunge to attack her. The homies explain that these are red sevens. He tells Hannah not to touch anything. That looks unusual. The homies further explain that these are carnivorous plants capable of paralyzing and eventually devouring humans as they grow. Our hero also realizes these flowers can grow on any surface. They decide to turn back and search around the fourth floor. Later, John-Soo enjoys a cup of coffee in the VIP lounge, reflecting on how they ended up on the third floor. Since there was nothing on the fourth floor, the protagonist concludes Division 7.5 did nothing on the third or fourth floors. For now, he finds a bit of comfort in the VIP lounge. The next moment, Hannah walks in and hands him a chocolate bar. Thinking about the flashlight from the chest, John-Soo suspects shadow monsters might appear again. He asks Hannah how long she was at Myeongseo Elementary and finds out it was about 2 or 3 days. A homie suggests he restock before moving on, while New Mask donates 1 gem and advises John-Soo to go to the lower floors. So our hero decides to head down to the first floor. The group begins moving toward the first floor. On the way, they see the second floor is completely deserted, allowing them to pass through easily. While going downstairs, John-Soo reminds Hannah that their goal is to find an exit, not to pick fights. As they step down, our guy reflects on how at the start of this game, he believed survival was the only goal, but now seeing Division 7.5 involved in everything, he feels the need to focus on them and get to their main base as fast as possible. Meanwhile, 2 guys in uniforms are heading upstairs, engrossed in talk about an outsider who was just caught. They grin while gossiping about the explosions they witnessed earlier. Suddenly, they hear a door closing. They wonder if it was just the wind or if someone left the door open. As both approach the door, John-Soo suddenly kicks it wide open, slamming it right into the guy standing closest. The man loses his balance and tumbles into his buddy, sending both of them rolling down the stairs. As they fall, New Mask donates 1 gem. It turns out both guys are knocked out, but the homies in the chat comment that they look dead. Our hero quickly grabs their batons and gives one to Hannah. She attaches her chain to the baton so she can use it at least once. Reaching the first floor, Black Furball peeks his head out first and signals them to come forward, reporting that the area is safe. After crossing the corridor, they discover the firefighter who saved them earlier is now being held by several guys in police uniforms. One of those guys seems to be the leader, accusing the firefighter of trying to sneak onto their bus. Despite the firefighter's protests, the guys in uniform ignore him, just shouting for him to die. The sight sent a chill down our protagonist's spine, as they all cheered and demanded the firefighter's execution. And the captain beat the firefighter unconscious. John-Soo looked for a place to hide, but found nothing, realizing the exit was heavily guarded. He wasn't sure where to use his key either, until he suddenly recalled a school trip here where the guide mentioned something about a solar power plant nearby. An idea popped into his head. He wanted to plunge this place into darkness. Suddenly, he noticed the checkpoint lights turn on across the hall. Deciding to move, while everyone was focused on the stage, our hero sneaked through, quietly passing through the doors and over the control line. Unfortunately, one guy turned around after hearing the door close. At that exact moment, our guy's shop updated. He checked for new items and saw one for 25 gems, a uniform badge. This item allows John-Soo to swap places with anyone wearing the same uniform as long as he knows their face, usable 10 times. Our protagonist hesitated, knowing buying it would leave him with only 6 gems, but he decided to go for it anyway. Meanwhile, the guy who had looked back was now knocking on the door. The second he opened it, he was instantly teleported to John-Soo's spot, while our hero teleported to his position. John-Soo then quickly regrouped, leaving Hannah dazed by the sudden change. He casually brushed it off, calling it a magic trick. With 9 uses left on the badge, and knowing he had to identify target faces, he decided to use this time to memorize as many faces as possible. Just then, The enemy leader announced the execution would happen at dawn and ordered the firefighter locked up until then. Meanwhile, our protagonist wondered about the pilot's whereabouts. He then reassured Hannah they'd be okay. Since there were still other options, John-Soo tried to ask the homies how to escape this airport, but they wouldn't help him, with one saying they don't give handouts. On the other hand, our protagonist insisted his brain was stuck, so he needed their hints to clear his head. Then one homie suggested trying to open every door with the key, but John-Soo believed that was the hardest path. He mentioned the sleeping bags nearby, guessing there must be many others here besides this vigilante group. Maybe others would help him when he attacked the vigilantes. Then the homie suggested he look for other chests like the one on the second floor, but our guy risking his life with only 6 gems left was a stretch. John-Soo thought deeply that maybe he shouldn't escape this way, considering the possibility that things he'd been involved in so far would provide clues. He sighed while asking the homies for help. When no one spoke, he suspected it might be something easily solved with the right hint. When New Master donated 1 gem, he turned to ask him for a hint. The homies pointed out how he called him New Master. So John-Soo decided to just call him New. When New stayed silent, our hero compared all the homies to Maxed Out, the one who would have actually helped in this situation. Then New took the bait and mentioned there was indeed a place to use the key, but also told him to stick to the original plan. So our protagonist decided to tell Hannah to go back to where their chopper landed. She was confused since that chopper wasn't exactly in one piece when they landed. On the other hand, our guy pointed out they could fix it. When Hannah wondered if he was going to ditch her, John-Soo sent Black Furball with her, just in case. He decided to stay on the first floor to rescue the firefighter since he had a plan. Elsewhere, the firefighter was being dragged to a cage. Inside one cage, an old man was being held prisoner. As the self-proclaimed chosen one left, the firefighter tried to escape, repeatedly shaking the bars, regretting his choice to go solo, even though he could have gone with the pilot, as he tried to communicate with the old man. At first, he just hummed, but then started laughing suspiciously, saying another one had become a scapegoat. The firefighter panicked and demanded to know how to escape, but it turned out the old man didn't know either. Then, as the firefighter begins screaming for help, the old man stops him. He reveals that he isn't an outsider, so he can't die here. He explains he was locked up just for trying to stop other chosen ones from killing a non-chosen person. He adds that Division 7.5 abandoned them here after promising to take them to a new town, which was actually their new base, and they decided to pick only those useful to them. Then he points out the firefighter must have come here after hearing Jeju Island was safe, though it turned out to be a recording left by the Division at the control tower. Outsiders who followed that message died, while some fled by plane. The old man then asks about the firefighter's friends, but he says he didn't come with friends, and those he arrived with weren't exactly buddies. The old man notices the firefighter is someone who has saved many lives, yet now there's no one here to help him. The old man decides to tell him something in case he gets a chance to escape. He tells him to go to the Yanji Moon Tourist Center because he knows Division 7.5 is headed there, and it's safer than this place. He adds that these chosen ones won't leave on their own and will start killing each other as soon as the food runs out. He hopes the firefighter leaves before chaos breaks out. A moment later, 2 chosen ones enter. The firefighter panics and bangs hard on the bars. Unfortunately, those 2 guys decide to beat him up for kicks as they move in on the firefighter. They wonder which body part they should cut off first. The old man stops them from torturing others for fun. So the 2 chosen ones shift their focus to the old man. They grab him by the shirt. However, the old man smirks before a loud crack echoes through the room. The vigilantes beat the old man so brutally his head splits open. Now the firefighter believes he's the next target. However, just as he's about to be snatched, one vigilante gets stabbed. Surprisingly, it's Hugh who saves the firefighter. Then he kicks the other vigilante, slamming him to the floor. The vigilante calls him a murderer, but Hugh reminds him that they were doing the exact same thing. As Hugh prepares to stab him, the other chosen one shoves him hard, causing him to hit the floor. After taking a hit, Hugh punches back and strikes his opponent's vitals. Once the vigilante is completely knocked out, Hugh puts his foot on him to keep him pinned. He then reassures the firefighter that he doesn't give a damn about him, and explains he only fights those trying to squat at the airport because he wants to make this place his home. However, the firefighter only sees him as a dangerous guy crawling out from the ceiling. While kicking the vigilante, Hugh says he's very kind to visitors and adds that he warned some guests to watch out for these vigilantes. The firefighter wonders if he's talking about the pilot or John-Soo's group, as Hugh prepares to stab the vigilante. The protagonist teleports right into his spot, making Hugh almost stab him. Both are stunned to see each other the very next second. Our guy punches Hugh, saying he always had a bad vibe about him. Hugh only cares about one thing: how that guy managed to swap positions. However, The kid is the only one who knows he's been spamming teleports to get here, but he has no idea how to explain it. So he lies, saying he's been here the whole time, but Hugh only gets more confused. John-Soo claims he was just pretending to be a vigilante, and Hugh still can't buy it, but he keeps insisting it's the truth. As Hugh starts looking at him with a weird expression, the protagonist wonders if he's about to get whacked. Hugh repeats that he just said he has no beef with guests or just passing through. However, the guy doesn't remember that because he swapped in after he said it, so he insists Hugh spill it since he has no time to waste. Even though the homies explained that Hugh was never a threat, and just a homeless dude, for the protagonist, the name Hugh Howard Thomas was always a major red flag. The name H. Home sounds just like the serial killer who built a hotel in the U.S. to off his guests. But then he figured this Hugh guy might not be that type since their last names are different. Meanwhile, Hugh scratched his head, unable to process what just happened, and the guy pointed out his brain clearly. Wasn't right. Hugh finally considered that possibility since no other explanation made sense. And then the protagonist advised him to back off and stop bothering people. Hugh finally left by crawling back up into the ceiling. Then the protagonist felt a bit of regret when he didn't see the pilot with the firefighter. Suddenly, John-Soo heard the vigilantes moving around outside because they had found one of their unconscious cronies. At the same time, he realized they had found the guy he just swapped places with. John-Soo yelled at the firefighter to get out of there fast. With Hugh's help, both managed to climb into the ceiling. Meanwhile, on the runway, Hannah and Black Furball had found the pilot. She explained that the people at the airport were dangerous, so John-Soo told her to ask for help. It turned out the pilot had already decided to bounce, but he was having a hard time fixing the chopper, so Hannah decided to help him out by passing him tools. Meanwhile, the pilot intended to check the controls before takeoff, while she wanted to at least make the chopper functional enough to get them out of the airport. Suddenly, they felt the tremors. After a moment of silence, terrifying sounds began echoing toward them. They didn't expect the waves to have already reached the runway. This made the pilot decide to leave immediately. He knew something was coming. That's why they needed to leave ASAP and fly as far as possible in this chopper. Hannah protested because she wanted him to wait for John-Soo. When the pilot insisted it was impossible, Black Furball growled at him. The pilot panicked a bit and told Hannah to chill the dog out, but Hannah said he only listens to John-Soo. The pilot gritted his teeth as the waves were about to crash in. And right then, a kraken tentacle rose from the water. The pilot took off immediately, asserting they couldn't wait any longer, or they'd be swept away. Black Furball roared fiercely, and the pilot told him to go find his master as fast as possible. Until then, he tried to keep the bird in the air. As the pilot instructed Black Furball to lead the guy to the roof, Black Furball bolted instantly. A few minutes later, the dog found John-Soo and barked to tip him off. The protagonist immediately realized these tremors were due to the appearance of the kraken. Meanwhile, the homies reminded him that nobody said that monster only stayed out in the ocean. On the other hand, he was only worried about his home collapsing, but our guy reminded him to stop talking like they were already besties. During that, the firefighter reminded them to focus on surviving. Then the protagonist asked Black Furball about Hannah. But Black Furball only knew how to bark, making John-Soo's head feel like it was going to explode. When John-Soo asked if he had found the pilot, Black Furball nodded. Hearing that, he stepped toward the runway, but Black Furball nipped at him to pull him back. After he fell to the floor, the dog tried to signal John-Soo by pointing toward the roof, and he understood that the pilot had taken off and they needed to get up there. But as the group ran over, the vigilante captain and his goons blocked their path. At the same time, another group cut off their rear. The captain was determined not to let them leave after they had made his squad a total laughingstock. So our guy joked about handing Hugh over to them in exchange for letting the rest go, making Hugh regret saving him earlier, having no other choice. John-Soo ordered Black Furball to take out anyone blocking the way. Suddenly, John-Soo swapped places with one of the vigilantes, leaving everyone stunned the very next moment. He took down a guy standing right behind the captain. The enemy group started panicking, while the captain felt a chill down his spine. As he floored more opponents, the guy nonchalantly said he was just a cosplayer. Using the swap ability again, John-Soo had only 4 turns left. Unfortunately, before he could finish the captain, the guy bolted and ditched his team. Then John-Soo continued to drop more goons with Black Furball's help. Fighting to clear a path upward, they reached a door that the captain had locked from the inside. After being mocked, the protagonist swapped places with the captain and opened the door from the inside, before the captain could even process why he was on the other side. He got knocked out. The remaining vigilantes were scared witless, and John-Soo declared they were leaving for good. Immediately after, the group ran upstairs, and John-Soo wondered why Hugh was still following them. Hugh explained he was still looking for a place to call home and was curious about the magic John-Soo just used. Finally, they reached the roof door. John-Soo wondered if the key he got was meant for this door, but when he arrived, he found it was already open. Before he could think further, he noticed the massive frame of the Kraken closing in. Everyone in the group thought it was game over. But then they spotted the helicopter hovering above. Unfortunately, the chopper was acting glitchy. Seeing this, he remarked that death awaited anyone who stepped on that thing. Meanwhile, the Kraken was about to strike, and the protagonist yelled at Hannah to drop the rope. Then he asked the homies about Helm Moss, wanting to confirm if after turning into a moss ball, its spores explode and destroy the lungs. He questioned its impact on other body parts. The homies were confused why the guy was asking now, but he pressured them to explain. One explained that contact with mucous membranes is also dangerous, and the gas it emits causes pain as long as it's in the body. Right after, the Kraken slammed the roof, making the group lose their balance. John-Soo yelled at Hannah that they were okay, but she needed to convince the pilot. Meanwhile, the Helm Moss, after turning into moss balls, exploded near the Kraken's body. Now the main group had a window to escape. The rope was dropped. He climbed up and reached out to help the firefighter. Surprisingly, Hugh grabbed his hand first, climbing up as the protagonist climbed a bit higher. Then the firefighter and finally Black Fur Ball clung to the rope. The helicopter took off, but with imbalance. He struggled to hang on. The whole group fought to keep their grip, and Black Fur Ball narrowly saved himself from a red devil. As they moved across the forest, the chopper's altitude dropped. John-Soo noticed the helicopter wouldn't last much longer, so he yelled for everyone to jump. First, Black Fur Ball jumped, then the firefighter. Next was Hugh, and finally John-Soo. Meanwhile, Hannah and the pilot were still inside the helicopter. When the chopper completely failed, it crashed nearby. Black Fur Ball finds Hannah buried in the dirt, and our guy immediately pulls her out. However, the pilot is still missing, so Black Fur Ball sniffs around and finds him. Luckily, he's still alive. Then they see the Kraken destroying the airport as it moves forward. To stay alive, the group starts running in the opposite direction. Fortunately, they see a van stopped nearby. It has a yellow plate, meaning it's a taxi. The driver inside is watching the Kraken wreck everything in its path. When Hugh tells everyone to get in, the driver protests, wanting to know their identities first because he was tasked with picking up someone else. Hannah insists they must get in or everyone will die. When the driver continues to resist, Hugh grabs him and throws him out of the car. The pilot takes the driver's seat, and everyone rushes inside. As Hugh is about to beat the driver, our protagonist stops him, pointing out that he's not an enemy. Once in the car, John-Soo calculates that he can make use of Hugh, so he tells him to go with the driver and find his new place to stay. The pilot starts driving once everyone is settled inside. The Kraken has made it out to the main road, and the pilot has to pull a sharp turn to avoid the debris. A homie praises the pilot's skills, and our hero admits he knew the guy was cracked when he saw him fly the chopper. After a while, they finally leave the Kraken behind, and Hannah breathes a sigh of relief. Our guy sincerely thanks the pilot for saving them. He thinks about how the guy could have ditched them to save himself, but he decided to help everyone. He asks the pilot's name and learns it's Kang Han Bin. In return, he introduces himself as well. Then he turns to the firefighter and learns his name is Yun Jae-soo. John-Soo observes the taxi driver, noticing he's wearing a driver's uniform. Curious, he asks who paid him to pick someone up at the airport and wonders if they belong to Division 7.5. He believes the payer must know about the people left behind at the airport, but deep down, the protagonist knows Division 7.5 isn't generous enough to pay to pick someone up. The driver says someone else hired him. A couple paid him to pick up an old man. When our hero asks how much he was paid, he's shocked to hear the taxi driver say he received $300,000. Turns out dollars are still meta in the current situation, and the driver needs the cash for a spot on a boat to leave with his family. John-Soo is surprised, because he knows Division 7.5 has set up a base on Jeju Island. Surprisingly, the driver knows nothing about that, and says he came from Guido Island for this job. Guido Island is actually located west of Jeju Island. Meanwhile, Hugh feels something is off. The driver was sent to pick someone up without knowing anything about Division 7.5 immediately. The driver shows a photo of the old man he was supposed to pick up. Yun Jae recognizes the old man right away. He had been held captive with him. The driver gets the chills realizing the old man isn't with them. That can only mean one thing, that he died before he could be found. And Yun Jae confirms this, adding that the old man died to save him. The driver reacts in despair. His last ray of hope is shattered. His reaction convinces our hero that he's not lying. Then John-Soo asks about the couple who hired the driver. He says the couple is on Jeju Island and became friends with the old man after seeing how weird the people at the airport were. They left the old man behind because he was too weak to move. They promised to send someone to pick him up later. However, Yunji says the old man mentioned Division 7.5 is stationed at the Youngmoon Tourist Complex and is planning to build a place called New Town. The old man told Yunji to go there, saying it was safe. Learning this, Jansu wonders why the old man didn't tell Yunji he'd soon be leaving with a couple. The homies point out that maybe he didn't trust that couple and only shared that info with Yunji for that reason. One homie wonders if our hero is heading to the Island of Corpses, Guido, or New Town.